Antwerp calls itself a city of facets. Cut light, cut deals, cut corners. The Diamond Quarter is a clockwork of habits. Coffee at 8, safes at 9, ledgers that never admit to sleep. Tonight on Somnolent Conspiracies, we're staying with the daylight. No ghosts, no curses. Only a theft engineered with patience and a mistake measured in millimeters. The vault job was clean. Cameras looped without a flicker. Alarms reported a good night's rest. In the morning, 24 safe deposit boxes yawned like mouths missing teeth. The managing broker swore nothing had been moved in his office. Nothing touched. He was half right. On the backrest of a leather chair, an expensive one chosen to look like authority, ran a pale scratch, straight as a ruler and shallow as a breath. Most people see a scratch and think accident. A detective sees a sentence. Subject, verb, object. What metal, what angle, what hand. That mark was the only thing in the building that hadn't been planned by the thief, and that is why it mattered. Our case never turns on perfect crime. It turns on the one place a professional forgets he's still a body in a room. We'll follow a chain that starts with a hairline in leather and ends at a workshop where diamond paste is sold by the gram and secrets by the favor. We'll weigh a timetable against oxidation, watch a chair give up its story under a microscope, and prove a man sat where he shouldn't have with a tool he shouldn't have owned. No seance, no prophecy, just craft meeting craft and losing by a line. If you like your puzzles solvable, come close. The chair is waiting. It remembers more than the cameras do. When Detective Clara Voss reached Diamant Behir Van Loon, the street was still rinsed in the thin blue of a city that hadn't decided whether to be awake. The Diamond Quarter does mornings like a ritual. Blinds half open, coffee cups marching across windowsills, couriers rolling hand trucks that squeaked the same note on the same flagstones. The building itself, a modern cube with a conservative haircut, stood at Peliconstrat with its security shutters lifted and a single uniform posted at the vestibule, unhappy to be the most visible thing in a district that prefers not to be seen. Inside, the air had that treated, filtered neutrality of money handled by the leader. Clara signed the visitor log and let the guard wave her past a glass turnstile whose LED blinked contentedly. Waiting in the lobby was Arend Van Loon, broker and managing partner, in a charcoal suit whose lapels were careful not to reflect too much. He shook Clara's hand as if information could be transferred by grip strength. "Detective Voss," he said, "thank you for coming so quickly." "You called before the alarm company?" Clara asked. "I called them as well. But it is important that our clients find their property," she said, letting him see that she had done this in rooms like this, with men like him, too many times to count. "Let's go." He led her down a corridor where the floors gave up a faint rubber squeak underfoot. The night guard, Peter Smet, a thick man with a soft face, fell in behind them, cheeks flushed in the way of someone who had been shouted at and agreed with it. "Quiet as glass," Peter said when Clara looked back at him. "I did rounds at 1, at 2, at 3. All normal." They reached the vault antechamber, a rectangle of white walls and stainless steel edges where everything had corners sharp enough to enforce seriousness. A recessed monitor showed a still of the vault door at 1:10. The time stamp sat dead in the corner like a moth pinned to cork. The feed ticked forward, 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3:40. But the angle didn't change, the light didn't breathe, and the digital clock in the camera's upper right corner never drifted a millisecond. The loop was flawless. "You noticed this when?" Clara asked. "At opening," said Arend. "We reconcile our logs daily at 9. That is when we saw the discrepancy." He had a word ready for every problem. Discrepancy, incident, situation. He keyed the vault and pulled the handle with a respect that was close to superstition. The hinges did their hydraulic song, and the inner room revealed itself. Rows of safe deposit boxes arranged like the keys of a silent piano. 24 mouths gaped open, their doors puckered back, tongue-like trays pulled out and left as if something had been removed with a surgeon's certainty. There was no debris, no foam dust, no glitter of torn metal. Clara crouched and ran a penlight across the frames. The light searched for a story and found none written on the obvious surfaces. She let the beam travel across the lip of the door frames until it caught faint smears at the reed switch housings. Not smears, film. Nickel. It had the dull sheen of a touch that wasn't a finger. How long was the vault door locked after close? Clara asked. From 1810, Aaron said. Until I opened it at 8:43. Our logs show no unauthorized access. Clara stood and looked at the night guard. You stayed in the lobby? I make rounds, Peter said, eager to get the words in their proper order. Every hour on the hour. No one could have. People always can, Clara said and turned to Arend. Your office. The broker's office was the kind of room where leather and glass tried to cancel each other out. A desk without a paper clip out of place. Framed certificates arranged in grids with the spacing of a surveyor. A tan leather Eames-style lounge chair sat just off-center, the sort of purchase that told a client his anxiety was welcome but would be handled. Arend hovered near the doorway like someone afraid to brush a speck onto a painting. Nothing touched, he said. I told the guard not to let the cleaners in. We kept it exactly as it was. Clara moved slowly, hands behind her back, eyes tracking edges. On the desk, a blotter, 2 pens aligned beatifically, a coaster with the ring of a cup recently used and wiped. She crouched by the chair and, at a normal angle, saw nothing but a matte spread of tan. She lowered the pen light, set it to a tight beam, and let it rake across the leather at a low angle. The surface changed from flat to relief. Pores became topography, conditioning wax became glacial shine. There, on the backrest, about 62 centimeters up from the floor, a straight, pale filament ran just off horizontal 13.4 centimeters by her eye, then confirmed with a steel rule from her kit. It had the crispness of a sentence written in a fine hand, shallow as a thought. At the right end of the line, the fiber nap lifted, the faintest burr, the kind of thing you only see when you're willing to do nothing for a minute but let a line tell you what direction it wanted to go. New, Clara said. Arend stepped closer, stopped himself half a meter out. That chair has been here for years. I would have noticed. Clara tilted the light again. You noticed 24 boxes were opened and your cameras played a ballet between 1:10 and 3:40. Did you notice if anyone sat here yesterday? I meet people, he said, recovering some steadiness. I met a fire compliance auditor at 4. Papers, badge. He pointed out our evacuation route signage was an older model. But that is, staff saw the chair yesterday? Clara asked, still watching the line with her light and her patience. The cleaning supervisor, a woman in her 50s with a neat bun and a face a wrinkle short of permanent disapproval, answered when called. We conditioned the leather 2 days ago, she said. It was perfect last night. I told my girl that if she left a streak I would see it, and I saw nothing. Aaron's jaw tightened. He wanted to call it old or normal or inevitable. What he said was, if it is new, then it means what? Clara didn't answer right away. She took a sterile swab from her kit, wetted it with solvent, and rolled it gently along the groove. The cotton brightened imperceptibly, the way snow takes on a hue under a setting sun. She sealed the swab, labeled it, took a second swab just beyond the groove as control. Then she measured again. 62 centimeters from the floor, a notch shy of horizontal when the chair was perfectly upright. She stood, looked behind the chair, and checked the wall. No nail, no edge, nothing that would have drawn that line unless the chair had offended the wall with intent. She set the lamp on the desk to a low rake, turned off the overhead lights, and let the office become a theater with one protagonist. The scratch read more clearly in that stage darkness. On the right end, the burr lifted in a tiny tooth. It suggested direction, left to right, ending with a rise. A left-hander standing quickly, pivoting, the object on his left hip scraping the leather as he came up. Is something wrong? Arend asked, because in rooms like this, silence had the weight of accusation. Something is right, Clara said. She photographed the groove with scale, with color card, with the lamp moving through 4 angles. She took a measurement of the backrest height and noted the distance between the chair and the desk. She looked for a corresponding mark on the chair's lower back. Nothing. She let her hand hover at her own left hip, feeling where a belt clip would sit if she were carrying a narrow tool in a sheath, and then she crouched again and let the raking light kiss the burr. Petroleum, she said softly to herself, reading the faint dark gloss at the groove edges that only shows when oil kisses leather and catches dust. Maybe. What? Said Arend. Something scraped this chair with a metal edge that wasn't dry. Might have had a paste on it. The scratch is shallow and clean. It cut through the conditioner layer. She glanced at the cleaning supervisor. You use a pearlized conditioner? Pale ochre bottle, yes? The woman said, surprised at being relevant. We buff in circles. We did it Tuesday. Then this happened after that, Clara said. She switched the lights back on and the room jolted back to normal, as if nothing had happened to its surfaces. Mr. Van Loon, I'm taking the chair to the lab. The entire chair? It's the only honest witness we have, she said, and let the sentence sit because she meant it. They brought in a cart, sheathed the chair in a dust cover, and wheeled it toward the elevator. Peter shadowed, the worry in his face deepening the closer they came to moving evidence past his post. I didn't hear anything, he said defensively before she could ask. I was at my station. The panel would click if... Panels click, Clara said. Somebody made sure you wouldn't react to clicks. She nodded at the security office. Let's see your control room. The security office was a low-lit cave of screens and tidy wires. The timeline on the recording software looked uninterrupted, a smooth block of night. But the vault camera feed, when toggled, repeated its crystalline loop with the arrogance of a perfect lie. Clara leaned in and watched Peter's eyes. They skittered to his phone on the desk, then back to the screens. What did you listen to? She asked. He blinked. Football, he admitted. I put the volume low, but there were moments, you know, where earphones became earmuffs, Clara said. You do that often? Only sometimes, he said, and he sounded like a boy confessing he had eaten sugar before dinner. It was a quiet night. Clara didn't press. Not yet. She filed the timbre of his voice in the drawer where she kept the things people said when they wanted to be believed before they had been asked to lie. She pulled the access logs and scrolled. Keycard entries at 9:03, morning, 12:17, delivery, 15:55, visitor, 18:10, close, nothing after. She made a note of the 15:55 visitor slot. Who at 15:55? She asked. Arend checked a paper daybook he had maintained despite the digital calendar on his desk. Fire compliance audit, he said. A periodic review of signage, extinguisher inspections. He sat with me for 20 minutes to go over the forms. Name? Lucas Green, he said. From a contractor in Rotterdam. I can send you a scan of his badge and the letter. Do that, Clara said. She zoomed the lobby camera feed for 15:55 and watched a navy-suited man approach the desk with a folder. The resolution offered the shape of a face without the trust of details. The jacket vents at the back flared a little as he turned, a faint print of something metal under the left vent. Not large, the kind of thing you forgot you wore when the chair was soft and you were pretending to relax. Did Mr. Green sit in your office? Clara asked, keeping her tone even. For a moment, Arend said. He was particular about how far our extinguisher tags extended. People like to sit when they lecture you. Clara nodded. She took out a roll of tape and set marker flags along the corridor leading from the lobby to Aaron's office. Door levers, the stainless edge of the vault antechamber, the panel's faceplate. She swabbed each lever with a new sterile tip, rolling the cotton, sealing, labeling. At the vault, she let her eye rest again on the reed switch housings. The small, gray rectangles were unremarkable unless you loved things that told on you. A faint crescent of brighter nickel colored the paint near one, visible only at an angle. She took a tape lift, a microsample. Detective, Arend said carefully, watching the ritual. Our clients, some of them are scheduled to come by today. We cannot cancel without creating issues. Clara didn't look up. You will not open anything else. You will tell them the federal police have your full cooperation and that this is to ensure their interests. You will not let anyone touch the vault or this office. She glanced at the cleaning supervisor. "No one touches anything until I say so." The woman nodded, pleased at an order that promised to be relayed with emphasis. Clara made a last sweep of the office. No fibers on the chair cushion that weren't the chair's own. No scratch along the desk edge where a metal case might have kissed it. The wastebasket offered only the normal discards of a day whose performance had not anticipated failure. She paused by the window and looked down at the street. Couriers still pushed their squeaky song. Someone smoked and hid it in their sleeve. In the elevator, the chair shrouded like a patient, Clara checked her phone. The lab would be ready for FTIR and GCMS on the swab. She wanted to know if the petrochemical profile was a generic skin oil or a specific carrier. She wanted to know if the shine she thought she saw in the scratch was diamond grit nestling where it had no right. She wanted to know if the burr at the end contained the tiniest shavings of metal that would tell her the edge was steel with a particular temper, cut at a particular angle. When the doors opened at the loading bay, the corridor smelled faintly of solvent and old concrete. She watched as two technicians she trusted more than most people took the chair with the respect of pallbearers and rolled it onto the truck. She signed the chain of custody forms, initialed the seals, and glanced back down the hall toward the heart of the building. The lights in Aaron's office were back on. From here it looked like every other careful room in the quarter. Expensive, tidy, capable of lying for a long time just by standing still. Clara knew better. She had a line 13.4 centimeters long, with a burr that lifted like a finger to point the way. The looped cameras and the quiet guard and the unforced vault were the magician's patter. The chair had forgotten to lie. "Where do we begin?" Peter asked, lingering by the bay door, as if proximity to departure could absolve him. "With what people carried into your building," Clara said, "and what they left behind without meaning to." "What did he leave?" "A line," she said, "and lines have direction." Back upstairs, she shot an email to the lab to prioritize the chair and the swabs. She flagged the 1555 badge scan and pinged the business registry for the contractor's tax info. She requested the roll recorder output from the DVR, not the reviewed file, and a copy of the lobby footage at the highest bit rate. She asked dispatch for a unit to pick up the guard's earbuds, to bag his phone, to check his playlist for white noise and football. In the vault, she stood again where the nickel smear hid in plain sight. She held a small rare earth magnet in a rubber sleeve near the reed switch housing and felt the tug. Whoever had done this knew the exact distance to bridge the reed without scratching paint. They had used nickel to mask the magnet's shoulders against stainless gloss. They had the hands of someone who didn't hurry when it mattered and didn't believe in fingerprints. They had sat in a chair and forgotten that a body in a room was a tool like any other. Clara pressed the intercom. "I want a complete swab set for every door lever from the lobby to the office, and a tape lift on the vault housings," she said to the crime scene team. "Bag the night guard's earbuds and phone. And somebody get me the cleaning logs for the last week." When she cut the line, the corridor was briefly as quiet as Peter had promised. Quiet as glass. She stood in it, feeling the way a building holds breath when it knows you've learned one of its words. Then she pocketed the rare earth magnet, turned on her heel, and walked toward the light well where the chair had already begun its other life, waiting under fluorescence for its scratch to say everything it knew. The lab smelled the way clean knowledge does. Solvent, ozone, something warm like dust burned off a circuit board. Clara signed the intake sheet for the chair and the swabs and met the eyes of Dr. Noor El-Bakri over the rim of a face shield. Noor had the purposeful grace of someone who trusted instruments more than adjectives. "You brought me furniture," Noor said. "I brought you a witness that doesn't ask for counsel," Clara said. "Backrest, single linear abrasion at 62 centimeters. I want chemistry, time window, and whether the groove's passengers tell us where they boarded." "Let's start with passengers," Noor said, wheeling the chair under a fiber-optic gooseneck. Raking light revealed the same pale line. Under the stereoscope it became a canyon with clean walls. "Shallow, sharp entry, minimal lateral fray," she murmured. Whatever did this was narrow, hard, and moving with conviction. No wobble. Clara watched the tip of Noor's microspatula tease a dusting from the groove. The powder hardly looked like matter, more like the idea of gray. Nor tapped the fleck into a microvial. We'll split. One for FTIR, one for GCMS, she said. And I'll take a tape lift for particulates too heavy to ride solvent alone. They moved to the FTIR bench. Nor pipetted the tiniest smear onto a diamond ATR crystal and pulled the arm down until the instrument hummed. On the screen, a valley and peak landscape bloomed. See that broad carbon-hydrogen stretch? Nor said, petroleum carrier. And that sharper shoulder at 1710 cm superscript 1, carbonyl. We're in the neighborhood of fatty acids. Not skin oil, Clara asked. Could be, but the profile's more deliberate than human sebum. Look here. She tapped a narrow peak. Oleic acid. If I had to bet, a formulated paste or lube using a petroleum carrier with oleic as a wetting agent. Paste for what? Anything that likes abrasive friends, Nor said, already loading the GCMs. If the groove held grit, the mass spec will sing it to us. While the machine ran, Nor rotated the chair to capture the groove's length in 3 overlapping microphotographs. Clean cut through the conditioner layer, she said, pointing. See the fracture edge here? Conditioner's still brittle at the boundary. If they buffed this 2 days ago, the top coat would be uniform. A fresh groove breaks it like sugar glass. She selected a swab and ran it under a handheld spectrofluorimeter. Oxidation halo is faint but present, she said. We do a time series on leather for you, moderate humidity, this blend. The chromophores bloom under a narrow UV within 36 to 48 hours. Your marks under that ceiling. It isn't old. Clara let the numbers arrange themselves into a narrative. Someone had come into the broker's office yesterday afternoon, sat back in that chair, and left a line. If the line wore a carrier and grit, it had been a working tool, not a belt buckle or a zipper. The burr told handedness. The chemistry would tell trade. The GCMS chimed. Nor leaned in. Abrasive signature, she said. Not silica, not alumina. We've got a broad hump that says polycrystalline diamond. Approximate mean around 3 microns. She scrolled. And hello there, trace cobalt. Cobalt, binders, lubricants, Nor said. Older formulations of diamond wiresaw lube used cobalt salts. Plenty have moved to safer packages. But some shops still like what they like. Diamond paste, 3 microns, petroleum carrier with oleic acid, cobalt-laced lube in the mix, Clara recited, filing each into the neat drawer that the court would need later. That's not from a hardware aisle. No, Nor said. It's an ensemble played by people who cut, polish, or fake things professionally. And the grit's embedded along the groove wall. Your tool wasn't clean. It carried paste, and the leather took a tiny share. Clara looked back through the stereoscope. The embedded particles glittered like a constellation if you pretended stars were made of mineral reasons. Can you give me the groove width and geometry? 240 microns average, Nor said, measuring. Walls are near parallel with a mild V toward the surface. A flat spring steel edge would do this nicely. Your burr on the right end, see the uplifted nap. Confirms exit there. Left to right motion. Left-handed wearer rising, Clara said. The lobby still of the navy suit flickered again in her mind. The print under the left vent when he pivoted. What about the nickel smear at the reed switch? Nor pulled up the tape lift spectra. Nickel, yes. And trace neodymium iron boron, your magnet's bones. Somebody bridged the reed switches with rare earth magnets and tried to keep the shine consistent with the frame by smearing nickel. No latent prints. Understood. Clara checked her watch. The day job of the city was now at full volume. Can you package a preliminary with spectra, photos, and your oxidation estimate? You'll have it before lunch, Nor said. One more thing, the conditioner fracture face. I'll do a controlled test with the same brand if you can get me the bottle. Fracture morphology at known intervals gives your time window a friend in court. I'll get it, Clara said. She left the lab with 2 things she could hold up to light. The composition of the scratch and the confidence of its youth. In her car, she called the cleaning supervisor. Brand and lot number on your leather conditioner, she said. Send a photograph of the label. and an invoice date. By the time she reached the office, the photo had landed. A pale ochre bottle with a Dutch label. Lot code that sang of distribution in the last month. The invoice was time-stamped for Tuesday morning, nor would have her match. Clara sent an internal request to the procurement unit. Antwerp suppliers carrying diamond paste at 3 μm and cobalt-bearing wire saw lubricants. Focus on industrial and jeweler tooling. Last 6 months sales, cash and account. She added a polite but unavoidable line about subpoenas if cooperation lagged. Within the hour, 3 names came back. Kroon Tools on Vestingstraat, La Forêt Technique near the Skippersquartier, and Diamond Service on Hovenierstraat. She called each, the tone calibrated to be courteous until it had to be official. Kroon Tools answered on the 3rd ring. A young voice with enthusiasm he tried to sand down to respectability. Kroon Tools, this is Milo. This is Detective Voss, Antwerp Federal Police, Clara said. I'm following up on a matter concerning diamond abrasives. I need to know whether you stock paste at 3 microns and any cobalt-bearing lubricants for wire saws. We do, Milo said. We carry paste from Van Veen, mono, and polycrystalline, 1, 3, 6 microns. And we still have a bit of the old cobalt lube in back. Most people don't want it. Regulations and, I'd like your purchase ledger for the last 8 weeks for those 2 items, Clara said. Account, cash, walk-ins. Please don't curate before my subpoena arrives. Pause. Understood, he said. I'll ask my boss. La Forêt Technique's owner answered in a wetted whisper. We sell stones and wheels, Inspector. Not trouble. I'll take your ledger either way, Clara said. Diamond Service receptionist was efficient. Send the form, she said. We comply. By mid-afternoon, the ledgers arrived as PDF scans that tried to be innocent by being ugly. Clara printed them because paper made lies fidget. She built a quick grid. Dates, quantities, particle sizes, carrier types, payment modes. Patterns surfaced the way oil does in water. Most jewelers bought paste in predictable bursts aligned with production. A couple of instrument makers stocked lube quarterly. 1-line items sang off-key. Small purchases of 3-micron paste, paid in cash, every few days, alternating brands as if to stay unremarkable. The buyer name was consistent at Kroon Tools. L. De Grief. The signature varied with the kind of creativity that happens when someone cares more about frequency than flourish. Clara called Kroon again. Milo picked up faster this time. Detective, your customer L. De Grief, she said. Tell me about him. He's regular, Milo said. Not every day, but enough that I know his hat. Freelance fabricator, he says. Security fabricator. He likes specialty picks and spring steel. He asks for quiet lubes and the old cobalt wire blend because the new stuff sings when it warms. Said clients think noise is unprofessional. Clara made a face. Did he buy anything else that didn't belong with abrasives? Milo rustled paper. Last week. A leather conditioner? Weird, I know. He said it was for bench maintenance because he had a leather pad What brand? Clara asked, the question already half answered in her bones. Milo read the label. It matched the pale ochre bottle in the cleaning supervisor's photo. Did he favor any particular carry? Clara asked. Sheaths? Clips? He bought a clip sheath for a narrow latch key, Milo said. Left-handed version. We sell both, but the left-hander sits better on the left rear hip for people who like to keep their right side clean. He laughed, then swallowed it. Sorry, you don't want a demo. I do, but later, Clara said. Do you have an address on file for him? Cash, Milo said. He sometimes pays account for bigger orders. The header says, De Grief Fabrication. I have a phone number and a VAT he gave us once. Send both. Clara hung up and pulled up the tax registry. De Grief Fabrication existed, registered to a small unit in the north of the city. Security fabricator was a polite umbrella for someone who made things that opened things. She ran the VAT. The filings were clean enough to be uninteresting, low, steady income, expenses that smelled like tools and silence. Noor's preliminary report hit her inbox like something dropped with purpose. Clara opened it. Spectra, micrographs, measurements, conclusions. FTIR, petroleum carrier with oleic acid signature. GCMS, polycrystalline diamond grit 3 μm embedded in leather fibers. Trace cobalt. Oxidation halo consistent with less than 48 hours since abrasion. Conditioner layer fracture clean along groove. Morphology consistent with post-conditioning damage. Summary: a metal edge contaminated with diamond paste and a cobalt-bearing lubricant scraped the chair backrest recently. Clara forwarded the report to her own file, the prosecutor's address set to autofill when the time came. Then she drafted subpoenas for the suppliers, formally compelling ledgers and any surveillance footage for visits by DeGrief. She added a targeted request for bank camera footage near Kroon Tools on days when cash withdrawals spiked against a particular account. She didn't know which account yet, but gamblers leave rhythms in their money, and she already had a heartbeat in the guards' playlists. She stared at the lobby still again, expanding the pixels until they admitted nothing. The navy suit, the left vent's faint print. A man who liked old cobalt blends because he believed noise had a shape and shape could be recognized. A man who bought leather conditioner 2 days before he signed the vault. Her phone buzzed. Dispatch. "We've got the night guard's phone," the sergeant said. "There's a file on it, white noise. Exactly 90 minutes. Queued at 1:08. Created by a user handle L.Green. "Save me the hash," Clara said. "Don't touch the playlist." She added L.Green to the column under Lucas Green and drew a line to DeGrief because sometimes you get to be on the nose. She called the registry unit. "I need anything you can pull on Luca or Lucas DeGrief. Aliases, last known, vehicle, registered workshop. Luca DeGrief, 39. The analyst said a few minutes later. Belgian national. Trades as DeGrief Fabrication. Known to consult for locksmiths and alarm companies. No criminal record. 2 mentions in civil suits as an expert witness on safe mechanisms. Workshop lease in the Seafhoek. A white Renault van, plates current. No weapons permits. Expert witness. The arrogance of that made Clara want coffee she didn't have time for. She checked her watch. There was still daylight in the quarter and people still bought credibility by appointing auditors with polished badges. She sent a plainclothes pair to the workshop with a camera and a legal pad. "Knock, don't enter," she told them. "Eyes only. If you smell solvent and hear nothing, retreat and wait for me. We're not blowing chain of custody because someone liked a hinge." On her way out, she stopped by Aaron's office long enough to pick up the conditioning bottle from the cleaning supervisor, who guarded it like a relic. "We have 2, the woman confessed. "I hide one from the girls so they don't waste it." Clara took both. In the elevator, she texted Noor, "Conditioner. Same lot. Do your fracture morphology series. I want a time curve the judge can touch." "Already making test grooves," Noor replied. "I'll smear 3 micrometers paste with cobalt lube on a spring steel strip and replicate your geometry. We'll have a lab twin by morning." Clara stepped onto Peliconstrat. The city had decided to be awake. Sun hit glass. Glass pretended not to notice. She thought about a man who sat where he shouldn't with a tool he shouldn't have owned, who believed in magnets and wire pins and the old blend because the old blend behaved in the hand the way he expected. She thought about a chair that had tried to return to being furniture but had been drafted into testimony because of 13.4 centimeters of impatience. Back in the car, she opened a new note and titled it the way she liked files, "The One Honest Witness." Under it she typed, "Luca DeGrief, left hip carry, latchkey clip, 3-micron paste, petroleum plus oleic plus cobalt, old cobalt lube buyer, leather conditioner purchase 2 days pre-incident, expert witness vanity."
Loop camera at 1:10, 3:40.
Night Guard White Noise by L. Green. She underlined the last thing twice. Then she set the phone down, put the car in gear, and pointed herself towards Seafhoek and a unit where the lights might be on and the bench might still be warm. If DeGrief was what he looked like on paper, he'd left a ribbon of his thinking in his trash and the heel polish of his habits on his floor. And if the workshop was cold, the ledgers would still burn. Small, frequent quantities whispered a man in practice, not panic. The city's lanes narrowed, then opened again, confession and denial in asphalt. Clara kept her left hand light on the wheel the way she did when she wanted to think, and with her right she touched the edge of the rare earth magnet in her coat pocket. Cold, precise, the geometry of intent. The vault had been opened by someone who treated systems with respect but people as variables. People, unfortunately for him, left oils and grit and the wrong line in a chair that remembered more than cameras ever did. When the workshop door came into view, steel, sober, with a buzzer that pretended to be a bell, she felt the familiar tick at the back of her throat that meant a picture was about to either sharpen or refuse. She parked where she could see both the door and the alley. A white Renault van wouldn't be hard to love. On the passenger seat, Noor's preliminary report lay face up. Conclusion: a metal edge contaminated with diamond paste scraped the chair recently. Clara tapped the paper with a knuckle as if it could hear. "I know," she told it. "Now show me the hand that wore it." The workshop door was locked and the blinds slatted to neutral. The plainclothes pair watched from a bakery across the street and texted in intervals that told Clara nothing moved except the sugar in their coffee. She let them stay as eyes and drove back to headquarters, where the truth often looked like a table. In the evidence room, she signed out the chair photographs, Noor's micrographs, a print of the lobby still, and a box of exemplar tools the department kept for training. Picks, latchkeys, clip sheaths, a few belt carriers that had done too much work in their previous lives. She booked the demonstration room, the one with the mirrored wall and the circle of tape on the floor where lawyers like to stand, and rolled in a twin of the Eames-style chair requisitioned from the warehouse. Detective Hendrik Maas joined her, tall, left-handed, and willing to be furniture's adversary. "You called me because I offend chairs," he said, looking at the setup. "I called you because you wear your tools like a locksmith when you're off duty," Clara said. "Left rear hip, narrow profile, you stand too fast." "I stand efficiently," he protested, but he smiled and accepted the clip sheath. She handed him a slim spring steel latch key. 6 inches of narrow conviction, a shoulder barely wider than a thumbnail, ground to a profile that wanted locks to go along with stories about compliance. Clara laid out a strip of leather conditioned with the same pale ochre blend. "Not on the chair," she said. "Yet, first we make a test panel. We'll sit you and stand you on a count." He clipped left. "I want the geometry, then we'll move to the twin chair." Hendrik clipped the sheath to his belt at the left rear hip. The latch key slid into it with a little click that sounded like a promise. He sat. The leather panel rested against the back of a test stool at the same height as the Eames backrest. "Lean back naturally," Clara said. "You just told a broker his extinguisher tags are out of date and you're about to occupy his air. Now stand when I say." Hendrik leaned, the way men do when they want to own a room and also pretend they haven't. The sheath's mouth just kissed the leather. Clara saw the moment the latch key's shoulder aligned with the panel like a ruler deciding whether to lie. "Stand," she said. He rose. The metal edge traveled along the leather in a straight, shallow whisper and left it alone with a tiny lift at the end. A whisper turned into a tick. Clara measured 13.5 centimeters, almost flat, with a burr lifting on the right end. She played the video back frame by frame. The liftoff matched the point where a left-hander pushes weight into the right foot to pivot out of a chair. "Again," she said, "but faster this time," like he remembered an errand outside the door. Hendrik obliged. The groove grew a fraction shorter, the burr sharper. She logged it. Then she moved to the twin chair, leveled it, set the condition test strip where the backrest's grain and angle matched Aaron's chair, and repeated the sit-lean stand sequence. On the 4th attempt, the latch key kissed, skimmed, and lifted in a line that, under raking light, could have been the pale filament from the broker's office. Under the stereoscope, the test groove's walls mirrored Noor's micrographs from the crime chair. Near parallel walls, a mild V toward the surface, embedded particulate glittering where paste had done the work. For the test, they'd smeared a trace of 3-micron diamond paste mixed with a cobalt-bearing lube onto the latchkey's shoulder. Noor, who had volunteered the exact ratio, watched from the doorway now, arms folded, approving. "Burr matches orientation," Noor said. looking at the rightmost fibers lifted like the nap on a new suit. Exit right. Your man left to right. Clara positioned the lobby still beside a freeze frame from Hendrik's stand. The suit in the still, navy, neat, pivoted with his left hip canted. Under the left jacket vent, a faint rectangular pressure printed against the fabric, the way a clip argues with wool. The department's video enhancement could not conjure a brand, but the negative space, the absence of smoothness, was eloquent. The line of the vent bent in a way that made Taylor sigh. "I want the angle," Clara said. She mapped the scratch relative to the chair's vertical with a protractor overlay. The crime groove sat a hair above true horizontal, climbing 1 degree toward the right end. In the demonstration, Hendrik's fastest stand put the line at 3 degrees. The sedate stand sat almost flat. She ran the film of Aaron's office again in her head. A man making a show of professionalism, seated as if he had been invited to a quiet scolding, standing when clock and conscience told him to move on. 1 degree of self-control. She wrote on the whiteboard, clip on left rear hip, latch key or narrow spring steel tool. Paste contamination, 3 micrometers diamond plus cobalt lube. Seated lean, exit to right, height 62 centimeters. Then she drew a stick figure and annotated it as if arguing with a jury that didn't believe in geometry. Hendrik uncapped a marker and added, if right-handed carry on left hip, draw is awkward. If left-handed, natural. Burr says left. He tapped the stick figure's left hand. He puts weight on right foot, rises, left hip scrapes. If he were right-handed and carried on the right, Burr would sit opposite. Clara nodded. The lobby still's vent print is on the left side, and the clip silhouette is narrow. She laid the forged badge scan beside the still. The name read Lucas Green. The photo acceptable in the way of photographs that pass through middlemen who want haste more than verification. The badge's background showed an office wall with Dutch signage that did not match the contractor listed on the letterhead. She'd seen the style. A safety poster with typography from Rotterdam, not Antwerp, and the contractor's logo pasted with an obvious drop shadow a shade darker than the rest. When you look at truth for long enough, paste glows. Borrowed ID, she said. Maybe stolen. Or bought for a day. She rang the contractor. An office manager confirmed that they had no employee by that name and no scheduled audit in Antwerp this quarter. The badge number belonged to an extinguisher technician who'd reported his wallet stolen 2 weeks ago. In Zwitplein, Rotterdam. Clara added it to the board. Borrowed badge. Dutch poster bleed. Rotterdam theft. A line from that to L. Green. On Peter's playlist put a bow on a simple vanity. Men like de Grief think they're invisible when they edit their initials into the day. She turned back to the chair and ran her palm near the backrest without touching it. He sat to manage the broker, she said. He leaned because people lean when they want to look comfortable in other people's money. He wore his tool at work height. He stood with impatience because he had a clock to meet. Why not the right hip? Hendrik asked, more to let the thought leave the room than to doubt it. Because the locker we pulled from Falcon Rui, if we pull it, we'll have a clip sheath stretched at the hinge, she said. And because Milo at Kroon Tools sold a left-handed clip. And because this scratch doesn't lie. She had Hendrik try the same sit-stand with a right hip clip. The line on the test panel sloped the other way. The burr lifted left. It looked wrong the way a forgery looks wrong when the ink is too honest about the parts it enjoyed. Good, Clara said. Pack the test panel. Photograph the angles. Nor, keep your particle spectra ready. We'll anchor the carry position and handedness with this. The rest is route. Route meant mapping contact. Clara set out the markers from the corridor again. The door from the lobby, the handle into the antechamber, the panel faceplate. She had the crime scene tech swab each and brought the results. Skin cells were stingy as expected. The vault housing tape lift gave her nickel with a trace of neodymium. The panel's edge offered a fingerprint partial too smudged to judge worth in court. The broker's desk yielded nothing but the clean and the cleaned. You think he took the key pattern then? Hendrik asked. I think he never intended brute force, Clara said. He built his night on intimacy. Impression on a key will find the remains of in his workshop. Magnets on reeds. A loop that never hiccuped. The chair is the mistake, not the method. The phone buzzed. The plainclothes pair at Seafolk. No movement, but the van had appeared, white Renault, plates matching the registry. The driver had parked with care, the kind of square parking that says either military or someone who likes angles to behave. He hadn't returned to the unit. Lock it down, Clara said. No entry. If he bounces, tag the bumpers with chalk. I want to know if the load changes. She needed to see the lobby still again with fresh eyes. In the tech bay, she asked for a motion model. The technician marked limb joints on the still at 1555, then on 2 other frames as the man turned. They crunched vectors and produced a crude skeleton shoulder width, hip cant, gait guess. The left hip angle, when overlaid with the chair geometry, suggested a carry height consistent with 60 to 65 centimeters off the floor when seated. The scratch at 62 felt like a ruler laid against a spine. Give me a silhouette clip for show, Clara said. We'll want to overlay this on the chair footage in the interview room. He'll watch it because he likes seeing himself pass tests. She took the printouts and arranged them on the table like tarot for someone who believed in evidence. The board read, left hip clip latch key diamond paste 3 micrometers plus cobalt burr, right height 62 cm lobby, left vent print borrowed badge, Dutch, L. Green white noise. The arrows all pointed the same way, through a chair. Next, Hendrik asked. Next we make the route match the tool, Clara said. He sat in the broker's office. We tie that to key impression material in the desk. He looped cameras. We tie that to a device or knowledge he shouldn't have. He opened boxes. We tie paste to box lips. We turn one line into a map. She called the vault text. I want tape lifts from the lips of the open boxes. Angle 45 degrees to the face. Look for abrasive residue. If you find diamond grit, you'll find the same carrier. Already on it, the text said. 2 of the trays have faint gray scuffs. Under magnification, we've got particulate. I'll send it to Noor. Good, Clara said. And check the broker's desk for wax dusting. Talc or graphite in drawers. If he lifted an impression, he'll have left kindness behind. The callback took 10 minutes. Desk drawer interior shows a fine talc graphite mix, the text said. Pattern suggests a light dust to capture a key profile. There's a faint transfer on the blotter's edge. Clara drew a new arrow. Desk talc / graphite key impression. The chair had not been an accident. It was an artifact of a process. He needed to sit to talk. He leaned because habit is a religion. The tool lived where it always lived. It left its catechism in leather. She texted Milo at Kroon Tools. Do you stock Polymus 3-pin picks? The reply came with a photo of a roll of specialized pins and a note. We keep them in back. DeGrief asked last week. Clara wrote Polymus 3-pin on the board and drew a line to the vault cylinder's microabrasions. Those fine, concentric polishes that only a non-retail tool makes when it dances in a lock designed to treat amateurs like wishes. Hendrik capped the marker. We have handedness, carry, tool class, timing window, and a face-shaped shadow in a lobby, he said. We need his voice saying he sat where he shouldn't. We'll get his silence in the right room, Clara said. For now, we go to the way in. She stood for a moment and let the room breathe around the board. In the mirror, her own silhouette looked like any detective leaning on inference, but the thing that mattered didn't lean. It was a straight line scored in leather at a human height. It had a beginning, a middle, an end. Approach, contact, lift. If you could teach a jury to feel that lift in their own bodies when they rose from a chair, the chemistry would do the rest. Clara packed the test panel, folded the stills, and called the plainclothes team. Hold Seafolk. If he returns, do nothing but tell me twice, she said. To Noor, box lip particulates incoming. Tell me if they hum the same 3-micron song. To herself, you left a line, Luca. Now let's see the door you opened to earn it. You don't break a vault like Van Loon's by wanting it. You enter it by knowing which parts of a building are lonely and which can be convinced to lie. Clara stood again in the antechamber where metal met manners. The vault door had the smooth arrogance of a thing that believed in its hinges. She let her fingers hover near the seam without touching. then knelt at the jamb where the reed switches slept under a painted cover that had never expected honesty to be tested with magnets. She lifted the tiny gray housing with a gloved hand and showed the crime scene tech the crescent near it. Nickel rubbed onto stainless steel in a gesture as discreet as a cough. "Bridge here," she said. He fed the glass brain a steady heartbeat while the door forgot to be closed. The tech nodded, impressed despite the duty to be jaded. "Neodymium iron boron trace came off the tape lift," he said. "Your lab says so." "Rare earth," Clara said. "Powerful and small." He cushioned it so it wouldn't print. Nickel smear to avoid a shiny scar. No fingerprints because he respects the small gods. She turned to the lock cylinder. To the naked eye, it was immaculate. Keyway a neat black pupil, faceplate unruffled. But under coaxial light and magnification, a micro-constellation of polished semicircles winked in the warding like the whisper marks left by a violin bow. Concentric, fine. Nothing you'd ever see if you didn't stand where she was standing. "Polymus," she said. "Three-pin dance. Not off the shelf." The vault tech adjusted focus and whistled once. An intake of breath he turned into professionalism. If it's Polymus, he didn't rake. He walked each element in with measured pressure. He had time, Clara said. He made time with a loop. On the antechamber wall, the DVR timeline still pretended to be a river instead of a looped pond. The camera over the vault had reported a perfect night from 1:10 to 3:40, the exact window in which the world will excuse anything if it arrives with confidence. He had polished that lie before he ever arrived. How did he sit in the broker's office without leaving anything else? The tech asked. He did leave something else, Clara said. Talc and graphite in the desk drawer. He dusted the broker's key to capture the profile or confirm despair. He wanted an impression he could build a working shape from. He sat to be pleasant while his brain counted teeth. She walked the route from the lobby to the office door. Not with her eyes, but with the back of her hand as near to every handle as dignity allowed. "Door hardware is brass core with a stainless overcap," she said. "Fingerprints will be mud. We'll get trace at best." He knew it. He touched where he had to, and nowhere else. She looked at the panel housing again. He tested this earlier. He knew the read threshold and the magnet size needed not to throw the tamper circuit. He didn't improvise on the night. He rehearsed. Clara had no romance left for improvisers. The street had taught her that talent without rehearsal becomes apology. Whoever did this practiced apology-proof systems. Back at her desk, she pulled the lobby camera feed from 1555, the fire compliance auditor in the Navy suit, badge and forms. The stills were as helpful as they would be. A man who'd learned to perform harmlessness without condescension. He tilted his head slightly when he listened, a signal borrowed from customer service training. When Aaron gestured toward the corridor to the vault, the auditor looked but didn't look with hunger. He asked permission to sit in the leather chair and did, as if furniture belonged to him only while he taught it a lesson about evacuation routes. Clara called the city's fire services liaison. "Your compliance program," she said. "Do you ever subcontract to the firm on this letterhead?" "No," the liaison said. "And that logo has been retired for 2 years. We updated it with a new crest after the merger." "Thank you," Clara said, and filed away the crisp pleasure of knowing the badge was a costume rather than a uniform. She needed to lay the path in court language. She wrote as if she were already being cross-examined. Entry, daylight 1555. Subject, Lucas Green enters. Seated in broker's office. Left hip carry visible under jacket vent. Desk drawer shows talc/graphite dusting consistent with key impression taking. New linear abrasion on chair backrest at 62 centimeters, 13.4 centimeters length. Left to right motion, burr to right. Chemistry reveals polycrystalline diamond grit, 3 μm, embedded. Carrier petroleum plus oleic acid. Trace cobalt consistent with diamond wire saw lubricant. Time since abrasion less than 48 hours. Oxidation halo, conditioner fracture. Entry, night 1:10 to 3:40. Camera loop flawless. Timestamp steady. Vault read switches bridged with rare earth magnets. Neodymium iron boron trace. nickel smear masking, lock cylinder microabrasions consistent with polymus 3-pin manipulation. 24 boxes opened without debris, 2 box faces with gray scuffs, particulates pending analysis. Method * key impression or profiling. Hallway levers swabbed, minimum contact. Paste on box lips to reduce stiction and mark less. She stared at it until the words became a structure, an architecture of choices. Then she called the prosecutor's office. Warrant for degree fabrication unit, Seafolk, she said. Based on chemical correlation between chair abrasion and abrasives sold to the suspect, evidence of ID fraud for access, and tool marks at the vault lock. We also need Kroon Tools ledgers by subpoena today and the right to seize any polymus sets sold in the period. Do you have a named buyer? The duty prosecutor asked. L. DeGrief, Clara said. Cash purchases, 3-micron paste, cobalt-bearing lube, and a left-handed clip sheath in the last week. Shop confirms pattern. Lab confirms paste and cobalt in the chair groove. Night Guard's white noise file authored by handle L. Green. Paper it and send, the prosecutor said. Don't make me wish you'd waited. I won't, Clara said, and meant it. She heated the corridor again, this time with a thought experiment. If you were him, where would you plant magnets without a visible edge? She set a small rare earth magnet in a rubber sleeve against the reed switch cover of a demo panel and felt the soft seat of force. Even gravity was impressed. She eased a nickel shim between sleeve and frame. Under raking light, the shim looked like the frame. Anyone using a flashlight would have to angle it like Clara angled light on leather. Most people don't. She requested the building's maintenance logs. 2 days before the theft, a service ticket had been closed for panel misalignment resolved. The field note was spare, door contact intermittent, reset and tested. Okay, no signature worth a name, just initials and the assurance of an industry that believes devices when they pass a test. She called the alarm company and asked for the tech's GPS. The tech had indeed visited the site 2 days prior. The system had behaved for him, because whoever rehearsed had rehearsed around him. She wrote down the initials anyway and asked for a handwriting sample. The ID fraud might have a cousin in a forged service order somewhere else. At 14:10, a reply from Noor. Box lip particulates matched the chair's abrasive signature. Polycrystalline diamond, 3 microns, petroleum carrier hauling oleic acid across smooth steel. Cobalt trace present. Lower concentration, as if the paste had been smeared thin to reduce friction on the pullers. So he used what he carried, Clara said aloud, because the room needed a voice. And he didn't clean the hinge on his clip after. She phoned Kroon Tools. Milo answered. We found the docket, he said without preamble. Luca de Grief, last Wednesday, 1 tube of 3 micrometers polypaste, brand Van Veen, 1 bottle wiresaw lube, cobalt-bearing old formula. And, this is odd, he asked if we had polymus pins in stock. We do. He bought a set of 3. Cash. Do you have cameras? Clara asked. One pointed at the counter, Milo said. I'm sending the clip. He's in a hat. You can still see him sign the receipt. Left hand. The clip arrived, crystalline enough to hold up in the ugly way retail camera footage holds up. The man's posture was identical to the Navy suits, minus the suit. Shoulders held like a coat hanger, had been sworn in as a chiropractor. He signed with his left hand, pen pinched close to the nib. He took the paste and lube with a care that said habit. He pocketed the polymus pins the way thieves pocket coins, as if he were returning them to a place they had already been. Clara compared the timestamp to the city's grid of bad luck. The Night Guard's betting account received a top-up in cash an hour later at a kiosk a block away. The coincidence wasn't proof, but coincidences cluster around intent the way iron filings shape themselves to an invisible field. She rang the Night Guard's phone again through the lab liaison. The white noise file? She asked. Created the day before, the analyst said. 90 minutes long. Hash matches no commercial track. Likely generated with software. The author tag reads L.Green. There's a note in the metadata. Minus 10 dB notch at 2.4 kilohertz. Why a notch? Clara asked. To mask a panel relay click that lives near that frequency. the analyst said, pleased to be useful. You play this in earbuds, and you won't hear the soft actuation when a loop engages. He didn't just plan the loop, he composed the soundtrack. She felt the small, cold admiration that always had to be declared and then denied. Respect the craft. Prosecute the craftsman. Clara returned to the antechamber one last time before she let the building go back to pretend. She had the tech place a magnet on the reed housing with a nickel shim the way she thought he would have. The panel's status winked closed, with the contentment of a dog accepting a false bed. She timed how long it took to bridge both contacts discreetly. 12 seconds if your fingers believed ground truth better than eyes. Add a minute to pull polymus pins from a pocket roll and begin the dance. Give a careful man an hour and a half and he'll turn 24 boxes into air. In Aaron's office, she stood without sitting and looked at the chair. Its absence, really, the square of space it had left behind. She could still see the line at 62 centimeters with her eyes closed, the way you remember a tone after it stops. On the blotter's edge, the tedious smear of talc/graphite waited for a court that would pretend not to be bored by dust. "Mr. Van Loon," she said when he came to the door, anxious, groomed, and trying to be a partner instead of a client. "Your visitor at 1555. Did he handle your keys? Did you set them down?" "I don't think so," he said, then frowned at his own uncertainty. "We discussed the evacuation route and extinguisher tags. I opened the drawer for the folder with last year's audit. He watched me do it." He swallowed. He asked if we had moved the extinguisher from the corridor since his previous visit. There was no previous visit. "He watched you open the drawer because he wanted to see where the keys lived," Clara said. "He left when he had what he came for." "What did he come for?" Arend asked, a broker finally stripped to a person. "Time," Clara said. "He spent 15 minutes earning 90 more. He used your chair to remember where he keeps his tool when he's not thinking about it." She left him with that because truth, delivered plain, does better than consolation. Back at her car, a message from the plainclothes pair. The white Renault van returned to the unit at Seafolk had not moved. Lights in the workshop flickered once and went dead. No one entered. The chalk on the tire was undisturbed. The door remained closed. She phoned the duty judge and put the warrant request into the crisp language the bench prefers. Specific address, items to be seized, diamond abrasives, wire saw lubricants, polymus pick sets, clip sheaths, latch keys, forged ID apparatus, any device capable of camera signal manipulation, any document or medium bearing the names Lucas Green or L. Green. She attached Nor's report, the Kroon Tools ledger snippet, the metadata on the white noise track, and the stills of the left vent print. "The warrant is granted," the judge said after a pause in which paper moved through an old machine in a new building. "Execute without spectacle." Clara thanked the judge and hung up. She called Kroon Tools one more time. "Milo," she said, "you did well. One last question. Did he say anything about noise? Singing?" Milo laughed a little, then turned it into a cough. "He said the new lube sings when it warms. He wanted the old cobalt blend because it keeps quiet in the hinge. Keeps quiet in the hinge." The phrase clicked into the little slot in Clara's mind where a story waits to be told back to the person who made it. She could already hear herself say it in the interview room, gentle as a chair. "You bought the old blend because you hate noise. That's why you forgot the one you made in leather." By the time she rolled down Falcon Rui, the canal's water slicking the light into minor keys, the team was already splitting tasks. One unit for the workshop, one to sit on a canal house. A locksmith named Marcel Vermeer had been seen entering with a case labeled medical supplies. Vermeer's name had bubbled up through the registry as a suspended locksmith with strong opinions about technique and poor luck with judgments. People like de Grief rarely worked alone. They preferred lieutenants who understood how to hold still. Clara parked with a view of the Falcon Rui address and checked her watch. The courier schedules for the quarter started their evening migrations at 1800. If there was a fence waiting to accept pre-sold lots, the path would narrow. She glanced at the back seat where the twin chairs test panel lay, its groove pale and eloquent under a cloth. The phone buzzed. Kroon Tools again, breathless this time. "Detective?" Boss says we pulled an extra docket. DeGrief bought the Polymus pins and the paste last week. Paid cash. I've got it, Clara said. Thank you. She looked out at the warehouse shutters and the canal's softened edge. Entry is a method, not a miracle. You bridge a reed with a magnet. You invite a lock to forget its pins. You sit in a chair and scrape a line at human height because you are a human with a tool on your hip. You loop cameras. You mask clicks with a song. And you think the only witness is a code. Clara texted the team at Kroon, hold that thought. I'm coming by. Asterisk asterisk, she wanted to see the young clerk's eyes when he pointed to the left hip clip on his own belt. And she wanted to smell the back room where old cobalt blends hid behind neutral labels. Somewhere between the register and the waste bin would be a receipt edge torn by someone who couldn't resist keeping the stub. Somewhere on a bench would be leather test swatches with single-line scrapes. Next stop, she told Hendrik over the radio. Kroon Tools. Copy, he said. And then we talk to the kid who sold him silence, she said, and see what else the bench remembers. She pulled into traffic with the warrant fresh in her pocket and a straight line still burning in her mind. The way in was clear. The way out would be Messier. But first, the apprentice and the bench. Kroon Tools sat narrow and long, a corridor of glass cases and pegboard where precision had been coaxed into merchandise. A bell made of brass that once belonged to a bicycle announced Clara with a modest ding. Behind the counter, the young clerk she'd spoken to, Milo, straightened from a stool. He had the greased palms and careful fingertips of someone who touched sharp things for a living and wanted to keep doing it. Detective Voss, he said, as if he had practiced the rhythm of the syllables. My boss is in back. We pulled the ledgers. Let's start with you, Clara said, and found a smile that didn't make promises. Show me what he bought, and show me where it lives. Milo led her to a glass case and lifted the lid with a key on a retractable lanyard that had worn a ghost circle on the laminate. He laid out a tube the size of a lipstick, its label white and plain. Van Veen diamond paste, 3 micrometers poly. Next to it, he placed a squat bottle with an old-fashioned hazard pictogram and a handwritten sticker, Wire Saw Lube Co. We keep that in back, he said, almost apologetically, tapping the cobalt. We tell people it's legacy stock. He asked for it. He, Clara said, letting the pronoun stay unhelpful until it wasn't. DeGrief, Milo said. Luca. He liked the quiet, he said. The old blend keeps quiet in the hinge, Clara quoted back to him. Milo blinked at the line mirrored. That's what he said. He murmured, as if the words had been taken out of his mouth and polished. Clip sheath, Clara said. Left-handed. Milo turned and pulled open a shallow drawer where carriers lay side by side like sleeping fish. He selected one in matte black with a narrow mouth and 2 mounting holes offset. Left-hand bias, he said, clipping it to his own belt at the left rear. He reached behind his hip, found the mouth without looking, and slid a narrow spring steel latch key into it. The motion was muscle memory, not vanity. Right-handers hate it? Clara asked. Most do, he said, grinning despite himself. You bang chairs when you forget it's there. He realized what he'd said and went a little pale. Clara pretended not to notice to give him a way to keep breathing. The ledger, she said. He produced a binder as ugly as PDF had promised, dog-eared and splotched with pencil ghosts. He had already tabbed the pages. DeGrief appeared in a tidy hand that was not Milo's. Someone older had written the lines, someone who trusted letters to behave. Dates marched. Small, frequent purchases of 3-micron paste. The cobalt lube every couple of weeks. A Polymus 3-pin set last Wednesday. Payment column, cash. Cameras? Clara asked. Milo tapped a monitor above them. Only the counter and the door. He wore a cap, still left-handed. He added, then looked apologetic for editorializing. Email me the clips, Clara said, sliding a card across. And the receipt copy. We don't always keep the carbons when it's cash, Milo said, and then, to his credit, looked. In the drawer where registers die. He found a wad of thermal paper and sorted until the neat pen strokes revealed an L that couldn't quite help being itself. He set it on the counter. Last Wednesday, he bought conditioner too. Clara lifted her head. Say that again. Leather conditioner, Milo said, tapping a shelf where the pale ochre bottles stood in ranks. He asked if we had something that didn't leave shine. That one dries matte. We sell it to bench guys who pad vices with leather. Clara met his eyes. He bought the same brand used on the broker's chair 2 days before it was scratched. Milo's throat clicked. I didn't. You didn't need to, Clara said. You're doing fine. From the doorway curtain, a man with a machinist's stance appeared, Kroon, by inference and by the brass name stamped discreetly on his apron. Inspector, he said, weighing whether to be offended. This shop sells lawful goods to lawful trades. And sometimes to people who prefer cash, Clara said. I'll need your inventory list and any notes on special orders. Don't clean anything until my team is done with tape lifts. Kroon's mouth did a thin line. We keep a tidy house regardless. Then this will be easy, Clara said. She let them watch her be patient. She stood at the end of the counter and took in the room. The pegboard shadows where tools had been lifted recently. The faint constellation of paste spatter on the corner of a mat where someone had tested grit by finger. The trash bin with leather offcuts curled like shed bark. She pointed at the bin. May I? Kroon bristled. Milo reached first. They're scraps, he said, offering the bin as if it had asked for permission to be evidence. Clara pulled out 3 narrow test swatches, each with a single straight scrape, shallow and clean, the kind an apprentice makes when asked, "Show me what this will do." Under raking light from the counter's fluorescent strip, the grooves lifted pale. At the right end of one, a nap burr ticked up. In another, the line ran almost perfectly flat. Who did these? Clara asked. Milo reddened. He asked if we had leather. He said he wanted to see how a clip mouth might mark it. I had a strip from a belt punch demo. He made one. I made one. He hesitated. He corrected my angle. Clara bagged them without letting her face say anything. And that, she said, nodding toward the back room where a faint spray pattern marred the air when you knew to see it. What does that rectangle on the wall tell me? Milo turned, puzzled, then saw it. A slightly darker overspray window the size of a book cover, adhesive that had caught dust. We hang decals there sometimes, he said. Who hung one last? He did, Milo said softly. He bought a blank and asked if he could use the spray. He said his customer likes their badges clean. Did he leave with a blank? Clara asked. Milo nodded. With backing paper. We sell them for labeling drawers. She walked to the back room. On the bench, a cutting mat, a metal ruler, a craft knife with a blade so new it would have cut breath. The rubbish bin nearby coughed up a peel of translucent backing that had been trimmed in a curve. Too neat to be random. On the floor, under the bench lip, a dusting of adhesive overspray caught UV like a timid constellation. Nor would be pleased. Adhesive had a way of confessing under the right wavelength. Clara stepped out and signed a receipt for the items she was taking. The 3 leather swatches, the thermal receipt copy, the spent paste tube in the bin mouth with a 3 micrometers label and a collapse that said it had been squeezed by strong fingers. She left the cobalt bottle in place, took a swab of its dribble crust, and bagged the swab. Milo, she said, just for him now, not for Kroon's listening posture. I'm going to ask you to write a statement. Be exact. Don't perform. The phrase he used about the lube, keep it. Judges like sentences that carry fingerprints. Milo nodded. Keeps quiet in the hinge, he said again, and it sounded different now, like a witness repeating a password. Out on vesting strat, the quarter breathed a little faster. Clara called the team at Seafolk. Ready on the warrant? We're coming. The workshop door at Degree Fabrication opened to a rectangle of light that made the dust in the air look like a map with no legend. The unit was one room subdivided by seriousness. A metal bench, a wood bench, a mat where a man might stretch his back, a sink that would never be clean again, and a pegboard that had been emptied with decorum. A laptop sat on a shelf, missing its drive. The bins were labeled in a hand so neat it made her wrists ache. Spring steel, 0.2/0.3/0.5. Mag sleeves, neodymium, sleeved. Many were empty. The absence was almost virtuosic. Staged, Hendrik said low. Wiped, Clara agreed. But people never erase rhythm. She started with the trash. Nobody perfect leaves a bin entirely innocent. At the bottom, the place people forget because it is boring. She found a pair of spent nitrile gloves with a smear at the finger web that glinted under the bare bulb. She touched a swab to it and watched petroleum darken cotton. Beside it, a crumpled square of wax paper with parallel lines impressed in graphite gray. Someone had rolled a key blank over a dusted master to take a transfer. The metal bench told better stories. A strip of spring steel sliver on the floor edge, bent like an eyelash, ground narrow and then discarded. In a shallow tray, a magnet sleeve cut neatly from black rubber. Its edge nicked where a blade had been impatient. A polymus roll lay open but emptied. The elastic loops stretched into shapes that remembered 3 pins. On the wood bench, a bottle of the pale ochre conditioner, half-used, in the same lot series as the cleaning supervisors. Around it, little circles of mat where someone had set and lifted something with glue on its back. The UV flashlight made the bench blossom with rectangles. Spray adhesive overspray laid down in the shape of badges or decals. On the far wall, an overspray rectangle exactly the size she had seen at Kroon. Photograph, she told the tech, though he was already kneeling with the tripod. Every rectangle, every pattern. On a shelf, a row of plastic cases, the kind photographers and thieves both love, sat open and empty like shells after a tide. Under one lay a business card for Marcel Vermeer, Locksmith Services, suspension, with a number Clara already had on a list of poor decisions. She bagged it. Neighbor says he left 2 hours ago. A uniform called from the door. White van. No hurry. GPS? Clara asked. Hendrik held up his phone. We got the court order on the van's telematics. Last ping was Birchsay Will Car Park, 15 minutes ago. The lake. A car park where couriers fell into anonymity and vans confessed nothing. We move, Clara said. Seal this. Mark items as we go. She knelt once more by the metal bench and ran a finger along the edge without touching. There was a small stripe of leather dust adhered to a smear of paste. Tan, unmistakable under magnification when Nor would get it. She scraped a sample. Beside the bench leg, tucked where shins don't go, a tiny leather rectangle no bigger than a postage stamp had glued itself to the floor. She lifted it with tweezers. A line ran through it, shallow, straight, with a burr to the right. She allowed herself one breath, not victory, just confirmation behaving well. On their way out, the team marked the door with evidence tape and set a seal whose signature she made exact. She could almost feel de Grief's irritation when he saw it. Men who curated absence hated official presence. In the car, she called dispatch. Units to Birchsay Wheel. Quiet approach. We're looking for a white Renault van. Plates as per registry. Do not spook. If it's warm, we sit. If it's cold, we track. The canal unspooled beside the road. Water accepting reflections and refusing depths. Clara checked her mirrors and saw the city compress into manageable lines. Bench to door to lake. She thought of Milo's hand finding the left hip clip without looking, of the leather test swatches in the bin like practice signatures, of the UV rectangles that made the workshop look like a printing house for fake identities. At a red light, her phone buzzed. The analyst from the lab. Those gray scuffs on the box faces? Same polycrystalline diamond signature, 3 microns. Cobalt trace again. Carrier profile matches your chair. Good, Clara said. Package it. We're going to need to prove that his knight touched metal everywhere. Birchsay Wheel's car park spread low and flat. A sheet of tarmac stippled with leaves that couldn't decide if they were wanted. The white Renault sat by the far hedge with the bland poise of a vehicle that had never been asked a hard question. A gull stood on its roof and considered the lake. Engine, Clara asked. Warm within the hour, Hendrik said. Palm near the hood without closing the distance. He's close. They split naturally into rolls built by previous days. Hendrik and a uniform angled wide to the exit. Clara and another plainclothes strolled the near rows with the gravity of people who forget their cars twice a week. Up close, the van wore nothing but road and a sticker on the back window peeled just enough to annoy any owner who loved control. Clara crouched by the rear bumper and set a chalk line under the tire, habit smuggled into protocol. Then she straightened and looked toward the water. The path down to the lake was rutted by cyclists and men in a hurry. Beyond the reeds, the flat surface held sky like a kept secret. Her phone flashed a message from control. Ping from the van key fob, signal at low strength. Somewhere within 200 meters, *** de Grief had not turned his pockets inside out. Either arrogance or a plan that wanted a return. Clara looked at the trail of shoe prints where gravel remembered. The heels were square. The left step cut a little wider than the right. The lines a body makes in the world are the same wherever it sits. She nodded to Hendrik. He's on foot. He hasn't left. And if he left, he's coming back. Either way, the bench has told us enough. Enough to do what? Hendrik asked. Enough to tell him exactly where he sat and what he wore when he forgot to be invisible, Clara said. And enough to make anyone he works with decide we're already in the room. Peter Smet sat across from Clara in interview 2, wearing the look of a decent man who had borrowed a shirt too tight for the occasion. The room was the size of an apology. Table, 2 chairs, a clock that made seconds into accusations. On the table lay his phone in a clear bag, his earbuds in another, and a pen whose cap clicked with a soft, magnetic kiss when you slid it home. Clara let him look at the pen first. People see themselves in props. You recognize it? She asked. It was a gift, he said, from the auditor, for appreciation. He said my rounds were, buy the book. From the man who called himself Lucas Green, Clara said. You kept it in your locker. The cap holds a rare earth magnet, strong enough to pin a reed switch if you know where to lay it. I'll say the obvious. It isn't a pen, Peter. It's a door that pretends to be a pen. Peter's eyes went to the bag again, as if an angle might change its pretense. I didn't use it, he said too quickly. I thought it was just nice. Clara didn't chase that. Your phone shows a playlist that runs each night. 2 playlists for football, 1 file for white noise. The white noise is exactly 90 minutes long. It has a notch at 2.4 kilohertz. That's roughly where your alarm panel relay clicks. It was created the day before the theft by a handle that reads L.Green. Cued at 1:08. The vault camera feed began its loop at 1:10. It was a quiet night, he said, falling back into the phrase like a chair. It was a manufactured quiet, Clara said, keeping her tone flat enough to be walked across. Tell me about your debts. He stared at the clock. The tick was loud here. I have a son, he said, which was not the answer and also was. My ex-wife is tired of reminders. I had a bad month. There were matches I shouldn't have watched. The account needed topping up. His hands made fists and opened again, rehearsing shame. He said he could help me with interest on the arrears. He said I only had to do what I always do. Sit and watch. Who is he? Clara asked, though she could have said a name on the chair opposite and watched it agree. The auditor, Peter said. He came at 4. He told me I was the kind of guard that kept people safe by not overreacting to every click. He said people like me are rare. He said. He stopped, the realization catching up to his mouth. He said what? Clara pressed, softening the edges of the room by fraction. He said I must have very good earbuds, Peter finished. He touched the left one when he said it. He said noise canceling changes lives. He gave her a brittle smile. Mine did. For 90 minutes. Clara slid a printout across the table. It showed a transaction at a gray kiosk near Vestingstrat. Cash fed to a betting account with a handle that had not survived adolescence. The timestamp was last Wednesday, an hour after De Grief bought paste and polymus pins at Kroon Tools. This your account? Peter nodded once, a motion that reminded her of men on docks agreeing to weather. He gave me an envelope near Café Blau. He didn't want to walk into the bank with me. He said cameras make people itchy. The cafe owner remembers seeing him, Clara said. He remembers the envelope and your face. He remembers because you were happy. People remember happiness when it appears where it doesn't belong. Peter's shoulders sagged. He said I didn't have to do anything. He said the cameras would take care of themselves. He sent the file and said it helps with sleep. He said I should use it on nights when the world is too loud. He swallowed. He said emptiness has a sound if you listen properly. And you believed him, Clara said, not making it a question. I wanted to, Peter said. He was respectful. Do you know how few people are respectful at a lobby desk? Clara did. Respect was a currency thieves spend lightly on the way to taking something real. She changed the angle. Play through the night for me, she said. From the moment you put the earbuds in. He ran it like a shift he'd trained for. Rounds at 1. Corridor quiet. I sat. The file. It's just a soft rain but no pattern. It makes time into. He searched for a small lie, then gave it up. Into nothing. I checked my phone. I watched the match highlights. I thought about telling my son we could go to the zoo this weekend. I thought about how he would tell me the names of the animals as if I had forgotten them. And at 2:30? Clara asked. I stood. I walked the corridor. I looked at the vault indicator. It was green. It is always green if the door is closed. He shut his eyes. I didn't open the door. We never do. Someone else opened something, Clara said. Not the vault door from your perspective, but enough. He made a sound that lived between protest and exhale. I know what this looks like. It looks like you held the door while someone sold other people's hours, Clara said. It looks like you didn't mean to, and that is not the point. His hands traveled to the ear he had favored earlier. He said my earbuds were good, he repeated, as if the sentence might put the world back where it had been. He said it twice. Clara nodded toward the pen again. He left you a tool dressed as gratitude. He left you sound dressed as silence. He left you exactly enough money to convince yourself you were being practical, not bought. Peter stared at the cap. I didn't open the pen, he said. I only liked the weight. Clara pushed another bag across. Inside was a thin note counted by the cafe owner as he handed it to them, the corner marked by a small fingerprint in a powder that wasn't flour. Talc graphite caught by a smear after a wallet paid the debt of a different kind of night. We will present the things he left on you, she said evenly. The file's metadata, the kiosk camera at the cash top-up, the cafe owner, the gift pen with a magnet in its cap. He used your station to anchor his method. The court will ask why you didn't hear a panel click. I'll answer for you, Peter, but I need you to answer for someone else. He swallowed. I don't. Where did he go when he left you? Clara asked. Where does he stage drop-offs when he wants not to be a person but a process? Peter looked at the ceiling, as if the grid could carry the answer like a circuit. He talked about water, he said finally. He said Antwerp is a city that hides its crimes in reflection. He said that if I ever needed to reach him again, I could leave a note under the planter at a canal house on Falcon Rui. He said the house has shutters with a paint chip that looks like a fingernail. He said I'd know it when I saw it. Clara didn't let relief show. The canal house was already in her orbit, courtesy of a locksmith named Vermeer. Now it had a color and a planter and a fingernail-sized chip. What planter? She asked. Blue ceramic, he said. Crack on the rim. He told me not to worry if I forgot which house. He said you can hear the canal at that one even when it's not windy. Did you leave anything there? Clara asked. Peter shook his head. No. He paid me at the cafe. Anyone else at the cafe? Clara said. A woman in a yellow coat, he said. With a face you remember because it looks like it remembers you. She didn't speak to him. She left when he did. Clara made a note. Faces that remember you. The fence, perhaps, or someone who makes logistics into favors. She changed the temperature. Peter, listen to me. This is the part that matters. You are not the mind of this. You are the door he nudged open with a story about how you are good at being calm. The difference matters to the charge sheet. But you have to stop being his door right now. He nodded. wet-eyed but something like relief already shaping his mouth into a person again. "What do you need?" "Your consent to a search of your locker already bagged and your statement exact. Names, times, the words he used. And then you will call him, and you will say exactly what I tell you to say." Fear spiked white in his gaze. "I can't." "You can," Clara said, "because you already did what he asked. You already used the file he made. It is time he uses a room we made." She stood, letting the chair legs announce an ending, and walked him through the paperwork like a tutor. When the solicitor arrived, she briefed him with the flat kindness that keeps wheels from screaming. The pen was examined. The magnet mocked them quietly by being excellent at being itself. The earbuds were weighed. Their noise-canceling curve was plotted and smiled at the notch in the white noise file like an old friend. After the statement, she stepped into the hall and phoned the cafe owner. "The envelope on Wednesday," she said. "Who handed it?" "Man in a navy suit," the owner said. "Left hand like he was ashamed of his right." The woman in the yellow coat watched him the way a tailor watches a hem. She left ahead like they never met. "Thank you," Clara said. Back in the room, she put Peter on speaker and typed the words for him. "Hi, it's Pete. The auditors want a second look at the extinguisher tags. Unexpected compliance thing. They plan to close at 6. If you need to shift the drop, the canal house on Falcon Rui's still okay. The blue planter with the crack." Peter swallowed and read it into his phone as a voice message. He sent it to the number he had saved as LG. They waited with the clock, which had forgiven no one for as long as it had sat there. The reply came 2 minutes later, voice-to-text in a clipped grammar that pretended it had never been a person. Use the house. 1815. Nothing changed. Do not be visible. Delete this. Clara stared at the screen a breath longer than necessary so that Peter could see the lie's shape. "Thank you," she said. "You won't go to the house. We will. You will go home. We will keep you informed." "I am going to be arrested," he said, which was true and would be handled. "You are going to be processed," she said. "And then you're going to sit with a prosecutor who likes exactness and dislikes performance, and you will give him exactness. Tonight, you're a witness we need to keep safe from your new friend." Outside the interview room, Hendrik leaned in the doorway like an unposed photograph. "Falcon Rui at 1815, he said. "It fits what Vermeer's phone drops told us. And the van is still warm at the lake." "We split," Clara said. "You take Falcon Rui. I'll swing by Birchsay Will again. He'll want to move with dusk. If he uses the house, he needs to believe our guard is still deaf." "And the chair?" Hendrik asked with a half-smile that had turned into a theme between them. "The chair is in evidence," Clara said. "Tonight we make it a lesson plan." He knew what she meant. Part 7 would be theater for reluctant minds. The experiment that anchors the story to physics. The show where a left hip and a latch key turn into a line that a jury can feel in their backs when they stand. Clara looked back at Peter through the glass panel as he signed the last page of his statement. He was no longer a man who had a quiet night. He was a man who had been told what quiet cost. She tucked the phone with the white noise file into her case and slid the magnet pen bag on top. The cap clicked against the plastic with a soft, traitorous satisfaction. "Falcon Rui," she said. "Then the chair test. For a jury, facts need a stage." Clara booked the evidence theater on level 2, the room with blackout blinds, a ceiling grid that could be angled to mimic any light a lie prefers, and a wall of mirrors to remind everyone that watching is part of work. In the center waited a twin of Van Loon's Eames-style chair, procured from a warehouse that supplies taste to people who invoice for it. 2 tripods framed it, one with a high-resolution camera for raking light captures, the other with a stereoscope camera pointed down its throat. Dr. Noor El-Bakri arrived with a silver case and a mood Clara trusted. Not excitement, not pride, readiness. Hendrik Moss followed, the left-handed volunteer who had already offended one panel of leather and would now do so on camera. An assistant prosecutor named De Wilde came with a legal pad and an expression that said he wanted to see gravity, not hear an essay about it. Clara laid out the pieces like a ritual, the pale ochre conditioner bottle from the same lot as Van Loon's, a strip of spring steel cut to latchkey dimensions, a small pot labeled 3 poly diamond paste, a dripper bottle marked Colube, Legacy. Beside them, a sealed evidence envelope, tape lift, chair, crime scene. "We're going to build the line twice," she said to the room. "First on a test strip to show geometry, then on the chair to show transfer. We'll mirror the broker's conditions. Same leather and conditioner, same curing time window, same carry position and stand speed. We'll record everything." DeWild nodded once and uncapped his pen. Nor rubbed a measured patch of the chair's backrest with the conditioner, buffing to the same mat as Van Loon's cleaning team had achieved 48 hours earlier. "We're in the 24 to 36-hour window now," she said. "Fracture morphology will match the sample." She pointed to the timer she'd already started. "No substitutions, no cut corners." Hendrik clipped the sheath to his left rear hip. Clara filmed the attachment hand position, clip orientation, height above floor. Nor weighed out a dab of paste the size of a match head and mixed it with a precise drop of cobalt lube on a glass slide. With a cotton bud, she smeared an invisible trace along the spring steel shoulder where a latch key carries its work like a smudge of guilt. "Show time," Clara said. Hendrik sat, the way men do when they intend to occupy a chair and a conversation at once. The room was quiet enough to make the tiny scrape feel louder when it came. On Clara's count, "Stand." He rose. The metal kissed, skimmed, and lifted. Under raking light, the scratch appeared as if materialized by command. A pale filament, straight, shallow, ending in a faint uptick where the nap lifted. "Measure," Clara said, nor slid in, lens hovering. "Groove length 13.2 centimeters in this pass," she announced. "Height from floor 62, angle plus 1 degree toward the right. Burr lifted at rightmost 2 millimeters." Clara projected Nor's micrograph beside the earlier image from Van Loon's chair. 2 canyons, same walls. Near parallel sides, a mild V toward the surface. In both, glitter had found new home in old leather. Nor scraped the groove gently and deposited the dust into 2 microvials. FTIR first. The spectrum bloomed, broad C-H stretch of a petroleum carrier, the shoulder of oleic acid. The room began to read peaks like a story with a familiar plot. Then GCMS. The instrument sang the polycrystalline diamond hump at approximately 3 microns and whispered cobalt in trace. On the split screen, the crime chair spectra and the test chair spectra nested like twins with different birthdays. "Transfer established," Nor said. "Chemistry matches. Geometry matches. Handedness implied by Burr orientation matches. Conditioner fracture edge matches time window." "And the oxidation halo?" DeWild asked, practical. "We've been running a time series," Nor said, clicking to a graph. "This conditioner blend produces a weak fluorescent bloom along a fresh fracture under 365 nanometers UV at 24 to 48 hours. The crime chair halo falls at 36. Watch this." She lifted the UV torch and the test groove's edge took on the same faint bruise. "We're inside the window." Clara turned to the second camera, the one pointed at Hendrik's waist. She froze the frame where his left hip rose. "See the lift." She overlaid the frame onto a silhouette extracted from the lobby footage of Lucas Green. The vent flare and the ghost rectangle of the clip under the left jacket vent sat where they ought. On the big screen, she ran their 2 motions side by side. Lobby silhouette turning away from the broker's door. Hendrik rising from the twin chair. The angles rhymed. "Mr. DeWild," Clara said, "we will cut this into a single demonstrative. Stills, spectra, motion overlay. We'll put the scratch from Van Loon's chair under raking light, then lay this groove beside it. The jury will be able to feel this in their backs when they stand." The prosecutor cleared his throat. "Cross will say, 'It could have been any belt clip, any accident.'" "It could have been," Clara said, "if any belt clip carried 3-micron diamond grit with a cobalt-bearing carrier. If any accident happened exactly after this conditioner was applied, at this height with this Burr orientation, by someone who sat in that chair at 1555. And if the same grit appears on the lips of 2 pulled box trays inside the vault. We have those particulates. They match." Nor held up a slide. "Box lip residue. Polycrystalline diamond 3 micrometers. Petroleum plus oleic carrier, cobalt trace. Same ensemble. De Wilde jotted a line, then another. Chain of custody? Sealed at scene, log to lab, log to room, Clara said, pointing at the clipboard and the camera that had captured every hand that touched anything. Your Honor, we've been boring about it. He almost smiled. Clara waved Hendrik back for a second sequence. Now the wrong way, she said. She clipped the sheath at his right rear hip and repeated the sit-stand. The groove sloped left. The burr lifted on the left. The twin-chair panel looked wrong in the way an earnest forgery does. Carry position is not a philosophy, Clara said to the camera. It's physics. Nor set the two test strips side by side and marked them with paint dots that would read on video. Left hip groove, right hip groove. The crime chair groove matches left hip. Not right. They ran a final capture. A long shot of the twin chair under normal light, under raking light, under UV. A close shot of the groove, the overlay of spectra, the lobby silhouette. Clara narrated in the kind of measured voice she used when she had to be the adult in a room full of future objections. Detective, De Wilde said when the camera clicked to black. If we needed to replicate in court, live, could we? We can, Clara said. We'd rather not subject government property to a lifetime as Exhibit Q. But yes, we'd use the test strip, not the chair. We'll bring the same lot conditioner, the same paste. The physics don't change when you change rooms. Nor packed her instruments with the serenity of someone whose peaks agreed. Hendrik unclipped the sheath and handed it to evidence like he was giving away a minor vice. Clara signed the seals, then pulled from an envelope the photo of the lobby silhouette again. One more element, she said, looking at De Wilde. We're going to pair this with what he leaves on his own equipment. When we pull his belt clip, and it will have leather fibers in the hinge and diamond grit in the corners. We'll put that under the same lens. Assuming we seize it before he boils it, De Wilde said, dry. His workshop has already told on him, Clara replied. Leather swatches scraped flat, adhesive overspray rectangles, conditioner from the same lot, a magnet sleeve, a polymus roll with stretched elastics. He left a postage stamp of leather on his floor with a right-end burr. Nor has it. There isn't enough boiling water in Antwerp to erase that. Her phone buzzed. Hendrik glanced at his. 2 texts, 2 different corners of the case. Falcon Rui team * blue planter confirmed. Crack on rim. Woman in yellow coat approached. Placed envelope. Left eastbound. Mail, cap, navy. Arrived 2 minutes later. Lifted planter. Retrieved. Left westbound on foot. No contact between them. Cameras live. Birch say will unit * white van still parked. No movement. Key fob ping increases. Proximity within 100 meters. Likely in sight line. Clara looked at the clock. 17:42. Good, she said. To De Wilde. You have your theater. We have our stage directions. Now we go take back the stones. Where? He asked. 2 places, Clara said. Falcon Rui for the drop. And the lake. Because he likes water when he wants to be nobody. De Wilde tapped his pad. The fence. We have a name from a locksmith's phone, Clara said. Anita Voss, insurance adjuster in daylight, market arranger at dusk. Falcon Rui will confirm. When she moves to the courier gate, we'll be waiting. She turned to Hendrik. Pack the test strip and the overlay. Bring the twin chairs groove panel. If we need to show it in a room that smells like damp plaster and bad intentions, we will. Nor held up 2 evidence boxes. 1 for court, 1 for redundancy. Spectra are backed up. Clara dimmed the room to ordinary. The kind of light under which nothing ever looks guilty enough. The groove on the twin chair receded to a suggestion, just as it had in Van Loon's office. She let De Wilde see that. In daylight, it's nothing. Under raking light, it's a signature. On her way out, she sent a quick text to the Falcon Rui team, hold position. Do not lift early. We take both sides of the trade. ***, and to the lake unit. Stay low. If he returns to the van, let him think nothing has shape. ***. In the corridor, the building's hum was the same as ever, the noise of systems agreeing to be invisible. Clara slid the magnet pen bag into her case, checked that the white noise file had been cloned twice, and looked once more at the calibrated scratch that had become a teacher. Every trial needs a lesson that starts in the body. This one would begin when 12 people stood to leave at the end of a day and felt, in the angle of their own rising, how a line gets written by a left hip that believed in its own anonymity. "Falcon Rui," she said to Hendrik. "Falcon Rui," he echoed. They moved, leaving the room to its controlled darkness and a chair that had learned to speak. Falcon Rui looked like an address for people who preferred their guilt in neutral tones. Brick the color of wet bread, shutters that suggested heritage without a certificate, canal water that remembered ships more than men. The blue planter sat where Peter said it would, crack on the rim like a half-healed cut. From the doorway it guarded. A fingernail-sized paint chip curled away from the shutter as if a careful thumbnail worried at it when nobody watched. Clara took the north corner. Hendrik drifted south with a courier's empty tote and the expression of someone deciding if 3 stops or 4 would keep him on schedule. A second plainclothes pair leaned into a doorway with the laziness of people who knew the time a street breathes. Camera units had been placed 2 windows up in a lace-curtain apartment whose owner had an opinion about thieves and a fondness for cake. The microphones wore their usual disguises. A cigarette butt, a torn corner of a parking ticket, a light meter that nobody checked. At 1807, a woman in a yellow coat passed, not hurrying, not lingering. Her hair was pinned in a way that made any face watching remember how cold looks when it learns to speak. She slowed by the planter, dropped something as small as a promise under the lip, and continued east without looking back. 2 minutes later, a man in a navy cap approached from the west. The camera caught the precise coordination of his hand and his shoulder, the choreography of someone who had rehearsed not being seen. He lifted the planter, retrieved an envelope that had decided to pretend it had always lived under ceramic, and walked away as if errands were a sacrament. "Vermeer," Hendrik murmured into the sleeve mic, the angle of the man's jaw under the cap, the way his right wrist rolled as if it had once hurt and healed crooked. Small anatomy lessons, all Marcel Vermeer. Locksmith, suspended, allergic to straight lines except when they involved pins. Clara let him go because the point of a drop is not the drop. It's the parade it feeds. "Hold," she said. "Follow yellow coat. I want to see where she thinks a stone belongs." The tail was clean. The woman with the yellow coat did not make mistakes with her feet. She cut across the canal, took the second bridge, and followed a line of mild offices and excellent insurance. When she turned into a building with frosted glass and a plaque that promised Voss and Partners risk assessment, the last bit of her profile clicked into a file that had been waiting for a face. Anita Voss. In daylight, an adjuster who measured accidents for money. At dusk, someone who measured opportunity the same way. "Anita's calendar," Clara said to the analyst on the other end of her earpiece. "You were pulling it." "Got it," came the reply. Personal calendar shows an entry at 1830. Frankfurt Courier, Gate 3. No employer entry. Private. Invite to a number that resolves to a prepaid. Location share is off. "Courier company?" Clara asked. "Trans-Euro," the analyst said. "Gate 3 is their outbound control desk." "So she'll bless the package as uninteresting," Clara said. "And if her man brings pelicans, she'll want them to look like medical samples." She sent a text to the airport detail to set the board. "Gate 3, controlled swap. Prepare decoy parcels. Train eyes for a navy cap and a woman in yellow. Do not intercept early. We take both sides." Asterisk asterisk. Then she turned back to Falcon Rui, where Vermeer had circled back into a canal house 2 doors down from the planter address, keys moving through his hands like language. They waited for curtains to blink. At 1819, a window on the second floor opened its mouth a finger width. A camera lens the size of an aspirin watched the street as if it had always watched the street. In its throat, pixels counted time. When Vermeer came down again, he carried a case with a medical supplies sticker and the kind of gate men get after years of walking through rooms that would rather not know they had been walked through. Clara signaled the plainclothes team. They let him pass and folded behind like pedestrians who had been given permission by a very polite sign. He didn't clock them. If he did, he counted them as noise. Inside the canal house, the unit they had earmarked for later turned into now. The door gave up with a pick stroke that felt like betrayal and consent at once. The hallway smelled of damp plaster and a lifetime of cigarettes that had learned to speak Dutch. Up the second flight and into the back room, they found the bench jeweler's kit as neat as a confession. Loop, stones gauge, a handpiece with a flexible shaft, burnishers polished by time. Beside it, 2 trays of industrial stones sat obediently in foam, cubic zirconia and low-grade spinel, drilled. Placeholders. Empty pelican cases lined the shelf like birds that had been taught to hold their beaks shut. Photograph, then lift, Clara said. We keep it the way we found it until we can show someone who thought it would never be found. The hidden camera they dismounted from the window was cheap but clever, good enough for a stream and bad enough to be disposable. Its SD card told a short story. 3 entries in the last week. 1 navy cap, 2 envelopes left under a blue planter, 1 yellow coat. On the bench, a roll of picks unfurled like a tongue. In the elastic loops that had held specialized pins, 3 ovals remained, stretched wider. Polymus had lived there. The urinary test bottle labeled medical supplies in a large, reassuring font open to bubble wrap and nothing else. But under the bench plank, a magnetic catch released to reveal a shallow drawer where 2 packets lay wrapped in brown paper and marked with the small lies of an honest font. Medical. Fragile. Clara slit one and found a parcel of stones that made light behave as if it had learned to count. Placeholders to borrow time, Hendrik said, feeling the weight in his palm. Real stones go elsewhere. Frankfurt locker, Clara said. Booked for 1830. Anita blesses it. Debrief arrives as Lucas Green, double suit, same left-hand clip. We meet them at the gate. A buzzer downstairs vibrated the air like a bad idea. The street caught a voice, not loud, but confident. Post. The room went still. Out, Clara said. Leave it staged. He's feeding. Let him feed. They ghosted down the back stair and into the slim crease behind the canal house where bins and bicycles coexist in an arrangement only cities could keep from falling over. From there, Clara watched through the side yard as Vermeer let a courier in. A real one, weary and efficient, collecting a routine weight that never was. The handoff was clean because clean handoffs are a religion in a district with too many gods. Envelope in, envelope out, a nod like absolution, a signature that meant only that somebody had written a name somewhere. The courier left. Vermeer shut the door and turned the deadbolt once. A man who believed the world still held to rules at the edges. Let him carry the decoy, Clara said through the radio to the airport team. We'll let the chain get long enough to hold. They shadowed Vermeer as far as the tram. He boarded with the appetite of a person who had learned to eat while moving. Hendrik and a uniform boarded a car behind. Clara stayed with the canal house and called the team posted at Voss and Partners. Anita, she said, our yellow coat just left. No bag. Phone in hand. Direction toward the Trans-Euro gate. Copy, the team replied. She walks like she's seen the map. At gate 3, the control desk area looked like all control desk areas. Laminate counters, boxes that claimed to be in transit in the way children claim to be asleep, a smell of cardboard and hand sanitizer. The airport team had set up 2 decoy parcels. One dressed as a lab shipment with the right weight and the wrong stones. The other as a bundle of paperwork that had decided to be heavier than paperwork usually is. The trick to a controlled swap is to look bored. They looked bored with artistry. Anita arrived at 1826, coat now draped over her arm as if she had decided to become less notable by becoming more beautiful. She exchanged a few words with the clerk. His body language shifted from default suspicion to professional complicity the way bodies do when someone speaks fluent procedure. She slid a card. A green light approved of everyone in the room. The navy cap joined her at 1828. The medical sticker case slung just enough to say, I am here for the short version. Clara watched on the live feed as the exchange went textbook. Anita checked the label, initialed the manifest, and nodded to the cap. He set his case on the counter. She opened it and did a small theater of inspection. removing one pelican, then another. The clerk busied himself with stamps because stamps look like guardrails. Anita lifted the lid of one pelican, frowned at the empty foam as if it were a style choice she disapproved of, and replaced it with one of the decoys. The cap man repacked, handed the case across, and signed a line on a carbon sheet that would later try to be useful and fail. "On my mark," Clara said, voice low. The airport team breathed on the line. "Now." They closed. Plain clothes slid into the space like furniture being rearranged by a polite ghost. The cap man reached for his case and found not his case but hands that were better at closing than his were at opening. Anita let her expression travel only as far as annoyance, which is the first stage of fear in people who control more than they own. "Lucas Green," Clara said, stepping into the frame with a badge that believed in its own weight. "Or Luca de Grief if we don't want to play today." His eyes moved once, not to exit but to the left hip where habits live. He started to reach and stopped because even men who believe in rehearsal know when a step has been choreographed for them by someone else. On the counter, the case lay open, the pelican's foam a black hole that wanted to swallow the day. Clara reached for the clip on his belt. Matte black, narrow mouth, left-handed bias, and pinched at the hinge. It was clean at a glance, but hinges respect strong light. Under a torch, grit glowed where cleaning never quite convinces. A leather fiber clung to the hinge's corner like a confession later than it wanted to be. She bagged it without ceremony. "We'll take that." Anita took her line. "I'm an adjuster. This is improper. My firm. We'll be grateful that you're being processed as a person and not as a press release," Clara said. "Your calendar shows a private export at 18:30. Your office camera will show you leaving with nothing and arriving here to pre-bless a package. Your colleague Mr. Vermeer's hands show paste burn on the fingertips, which is what happens when you polish a tell. We have your previous drop on a hidden camera 2 doors down from the blue planter with the cracked rim. Your coat is as loyal to you as your friends are." Anita studied Clara, trying to find a seam. "You didn't open the vault," she said finally, which was both true and an attempted wedge. "We opened the chair," Clara said, "and the chair opened everything else." She nodded to the tech, who swung the small field stereoscope over the counter. In its lens, the hinge grit on the belt clip arranged itself into a pattern that wasn't dust. Nor, on video call, hummed the spectrum. Polycrystalline diamond 3 μm, carrier petroleum with oleic acid, cobalt trace. Transfer. Clara turned to de Grief. "In interview," she said, "you are going to deny everything that is flattering and admit everything that is inevitable. Before we go, I'd like you to watch a short film." She gestured, and the airport team, bless them, pushed a tablet across the counter. The footage ran in order: the raking light capture of Van Loon's chair groove, the micrograph twin that mirrored it, the overlay of Hendrik rising with a left-hip clip, the lobby silhouette turned into an angle that matched the Burr's exit. It is a strange thing to watch a man see himself in a scratch. The mind catalogs the ways it could be anyone else and then makes the uncomfortable inventory of how many ways it is not. Clara tapped the screen at the end. "This line," she said softly, "is where you forgot you were visible." He looked at the chair groove 1 beat longer than he looked at the handcuffs. When he spoke, it was to the room, not to her. "Solicitor," he said, and tiredness finally put weight into his posture. They booked him without theater and walked Anita in a different direction because people like to believe fate has corridors. Vermeer met them halfway between alleys and policies, picked up on the tram platform after a uniform asked to see the contents of a medical sticker that had never known medicine. In his pick roll, nestled where elastic held their shapes like species, sat the polymus pins. His fingers told the cobalt story again, shiny at the whorls where paste had lately been. Back at headquarters, Clara wrote the charge sheet the way you write a ledger when you don't intend to be surprised later. De Grief, aggravated theft, conspiracy, access device fraud. Vermeer, complicity. Voss, handling stolen goods. Smet, facilitation. She sent an evidence log to Noor with the belt clip tagged for hinge residue and leather fibers. "You'll get your grit," she added, "and your fiber cross-sections." When she opened her drawer at the end of the hour, the magnet pen lay where she'd left it. She uncapped it and held the cap near the edge of a demo reed switch for a second. The panel winked green. She capped it again and listened to the click the room didn't make. Outside, Antwerp's evening dressed itself in reflections. In the broker's office, the Eames chair waited in evidence lighting instead of daylight. Its groove as pale as a whisper and as loud as a verdict when you gave it the right lamp. There would be paperwork, and there would be the small, unromantic joy of serial numbers matched and depositors called. There would be interviews and a court that preferred gravity to adjectives. Clara stood, rubbed the heel of her left hand once against her lower back the way a person does when they have occupied too many chairs, and sent a text to DeWild. We took them. Tomorrow we teach the line to speak. Asterisk asterisk. The clock said an interrogation room was about to become a classroom. Part 9 would be a lesson taught with a sting. Interview 4 had the ergonomics of a lesson and the warmth of a fridge. Luca de Grief sat with his solicitor a fixed shoulder's width away, and the belt clip already logged into evidence under a tag that looked like a recipe. Hinge residue / leather fiber / diamond grit, 3 micrometers. Suspect clip. On the table lay nothing he could pivot into a weapon. Only a carafe of water that had learned not to slosh and 2 glasses that were either for civility or prince, depending on who you were. Clara angled the chair opposite him with a care that read like courtesy and closed the door. DeWild took the corner, pad open, pen balanced like a metronome. You are being recorded, Clara said. You may stop at any time to consult with counsel. The solicitor nodded once, squarely. He had the air of a man who knew how to put a towel under a door before smoke discovered itself. My client denies entering the vault, he said before anyone else could speak. He denies conspiracy, denies possession, denies intention. Clara wore a face that didn't argue with nouns. Shall we start with a line, Mr. de Grief? She tapped the tablet awake and let the first frame show itself. A tan leather backrest, raking light revealing a pale groove at human height. She didn't narrate yet. She let the room take in the thinness of it and the fact of it. The solicitor made a sound meant to be a chuckle and achieved a cough. A scratch on a chair is not a crime. Sometimes it is a confession, Clara said and advanced. Micrograph. Grooved walls near parallel. Glitter embedded. FTIR and GCMS spectra nested. Crime chair and test chair singing the same quiet song. Petroleum carrier, oleic shoulder, diamond hump, cobalt whisper. The overlay of Hendrick's left hip rise and the lobby silhouette with the left vents flare. The burr lifted to the right, the angle up 1 degree, the groove length 13 point something. Your demonstration proves only that scratches can be replicated, the solicitor said, tone pitched to rehearsed blandness. It does not prove who did the scratching. Clara paused the video on the frame where the lobby silhouette's left hip matched the scratch's exit angle as if geometry had given consent. She let the silence be a tool. Then she slid an evidence bag toward DeWild, who took it by the top edge. Inside, the belt clip's hinge glittered more than hinges should under strong light. A tan fiber lay in the corner like a hair that had remembered where it belonged. We seized this from your client's belt, Clara said. Under the microscope we have diamond grit of approximately 3 microns embedded in the hinge grease, a petroleum and oleic carrier, and leather fibers whose dye lot matches the broker's chair within the tolerances your expert will praise. The hinge carries the same chorus as the chair. The solicitor's jaw prepared to be tired. My client uses abrasives in his trade. He consults on security. He may visit furniture. Fibers travel. Fibers do, Clara said. Burrs don't. Burrs right direction. And metadata refuses metaphors. The night guard played a 90-minute file with a notch engineered to erase the panel's relay click. Created the day before by L. Green. That is not an accident. It is choreography. De Grief kept his face still. The stillness had been practiced enough to make his eyes heavy. Men who liked systems often believed faces were a system too. Clara reached for the carafe, poured water into both glasses, then did not touch hers. Tell me about noise, she said mildly, almost as if this were an interview about taste. You prefer the old cobalt-bearing blend because the new one sings when it warms. It keeps quiet in the hinge. His head lifted, an involuntary millimeter, the way a craftsman tips his ear when someone misquotes a detail he cares about. It might have been no move at all. It was enough to live in the record. The solicitor saw it too. "We'll take a short break," he said, already half standing. "We'll pause whenever you like." Clara agreed pleasantly and did not. She tapped the screen again. Gate 3 came alive. Anita's yellow coat draped like strategy, the medical sticker case with its pelicans, the swap that looked so procedural it bordered on sacred. Then her team closing, the clip bagged, the hinge under the lens, the grit chiming its 3-micron signature on demand. "Ms. Voss is in the next room," Clara said when the video ended. "Mr. Vermeer in the other. Mr. Smet is providing a useful perspective on the price of emptiness. If you truly never entered the broker's office, perhaps we should reconvene in their company and arrange a conversation among colleagues." The solicitor's knuckles softened. "You will not put my client in a room with—" "Of course not," de Wilde said without looking up. "We'll let them talk through us." Clara turned to the wall speaker. "Bring Ms. Voss to interview 3, she said, "and leave her door open." She looked at de Grief. "You'll hear only what is meant for you." She stood, collecting the tablet, and left them with the quiet and the shape of their choices. In interview 3, Anita watched her reflection behave like a stranger in one-way glass. "Ms. Voss," Clara said, friendly as paper. "For the record, an adjuster with access to schedule data, valuation reports, and the rhythms of insured assets. You handled the courier handoff tonight. You are familiar with the blue planter on Falcon Rui. You know Mr. Vermeer's handwriting better than he thinks. You have your show," Anita said. "You're a curator of coincidences." Clara placed 2 photos on the table. The first, Anita's hand under the planter rim, the envelope gloved by ceramic shadow. The second, Anita at gate 3 with a manifest under a stamp. She set a third photo down, a locker reservation under a Frankfurt airport consignment service, opened as a screenshot from a portal on a prepaid account. The access code block was blurred, except for the timestamp. "Your code," Clara said, tapping the timestamp. "This is where real stones go to wait for flights. You can cut your losses here." Anita did not move for 3 beats. Then she exhaled a sentence that tried to be disdain and found relief halfway through. "If I give you the locker, I don't write anyone else's name, and I walk out on a restraining leash? You walk toward not being the center of the charge sheet," Clara said. "You walk toward handling stolen goods instead of carrying a conspiracy." Anita looked at the glass and the version of herself it made. "He thinks details save him," she said, not quite contemptuous. "He believes in paste peak widths and read switches. He believes if he loops a camera just right, morality resets every second." "Locker code," Clara said, "because relief needs a room it can't decorate. Now." Anita gave it with the precision of someone who knew she could not be sloppy anymore and wanted credit for having been born exact. Clara tapped it to the airport unit. "Frankfurt locker, recover. Serial numbers to follow. Do not publicize. ****. Back in interview 4, de Grief sat in the same posture and wore a new fraction of tired. The solicitor was whispering with a patience that had hardened into glass. "She flips," Clara said. Not triumphantly, not cruelly. "She doesn't owe you loyalty. She sells risk. Today you are risk." "My client does not respond," the solicitor said. "You will," Clara told de Grief, tone drifting from patient to precise. "Maybe not today, but you will. And when you do, it will be because you cannot stand that we have told the story of your night without you. It will be because something in you needs the physics to be admired. So let's admire it." She took a pen and sketched on the pad, the way good teachers do when adults become children who need diagrams. You bridged the reed switches with magnets in sleeves to avoid prints and to soften contact. You masked shine with nickel so a flashlight wouldn't betray you to a bored guard. Your loop rolled at 1:10 with a timestamp that never breathed. You prepared a 90-minute white noise file with a notch to comfort the panel's click out of hearing. You sat in the broker's chair at 15:55 because negotiation benefits from posture. You kept your latch key at your left rear hip because you're left-handed and hate awkward draws. You stood too quickly and wrote 13.4 centimeters of yourself on leather. Later, you used the same paste on box lips to reduce stiction while you pulled trays because you're the kind of man who can feel stiction. You swapped stones into pelicans that had stories printed on their foam. You left placeholders with our locksmith friend because you prefer to look at an empty bench and see work, not guilt. She slid the page to the center of the table. Where am I wrong? I'm generous with error. The solicitor's mouth opened. De Grief beat him to sound. Polymus doesn't leave concentric polish unless you lean it, he said, then shut his teeth on the noun he hadn't meant to feed. Clara did not show satisfaction. You're right, she said evenly. We saw the lean. You've been leaning a long time. He stared at the table. The stillness in his face cracked the way lacquer does under hot light. Not dramatic, but audible to those who listen for tiny defeats. Luca, the solicitor hissed. He lifted his eyes and looked at the tablet's frozen frame. Hendrik's hip, the scratch, the lobby silhouette with the left vent's flare, the pale groove that had insisted on being proof. He was the sort of man who recognizes workmanship even when it is against him. You taught the chair to speak, he said, almost admiringly. That's new. No seance, Clara said softly. Just craft. Silence broadened, the kind that wants to become a confession if you give it a foothold. Clara didn't rush it. She let him feel the small dignity of choosing which way to lose. He found a compromise. Confess to physics, deny to law. We all sit, he said. We all carry. You're betting on an angle. I am, Clara said. And on the fiber in your hinge, the cobalt in your hinge grease, the white noise notch tuned to a panel you didn't own, the cashier's camera at the kiosk where you topped a guard's account after you bought paste and Polymus pins, the hidden camera at a canal house where you retrieved envelopes under a planter with a cracked rim, the Frankfurt locker code your colleague has given us, and the serials that will match depositors. I am betting on the fact that we can stand 12 people in a room, show them a chair and a line, and they will feel the physics in their own bodies. He leaned back as if instinct wanted to test new leather for how it holds weight. The solicitor's hand landed on his sleeve. Solicitor, De Grief said again, but the syllables had lost shape. They were not a request. They were a pause button. Clara gathered the tablet and left them with water that didn't need them. In the hall, she met Hendrik coming off interview 5 where Vermeer had been introduced to the Polymus pins found sleeping in his roll and the paste burn on his fingertips that shone under a loop like small, guilty moons. Vermeer? She asked. He wants to be an accessory to genius, not a partner to a loss, Hendrik said. He'll name Anita as the arranger. He's already named the courier and the times he prefers to risk trams. And our guard. Full statement, Hendrik said. He's precise. It hurts him. He'll wear it. Clara checked her phone. The Frankfurt detail had responded with a tidy photo. A locker door open, pelicans inside, stones tested with a portable refractometer and a microlaser the way you test hope. Numbers would follow. For now, the picture was enough to let her imagine Arend van Loon's mouth attempt gratitude and settle for a controlled release of relief. The quarter would hum differently tomorrow. It always did when stones came home. She returned to interview 4 for the last movement. We've recovered the diamonds, she said, truth folded without ornament. The serials will match depositors. Your colleague Ms. Voss will sign the paperwork that makes that a sentence. Mr. Vermeer has acknowledged possession of specialized pick sets and the preparation of drop locations. The solicitor rose to full height within his chair. My client will make no further statement. He has made enough, Clara said. The rest belongs to court. She stood and glanced once more at the frozen frame where a left hip taut leather to remember it. We're done here, she said. On the way out, she passed interview 3. Anita sat with her hands folded. The yellow coat hung neatly on the chair back like a well-trained pet. When Clara opened the door, Anita didn't look up. I'm not built for rooms like this, she said without prompting. Neither is anyone until they are, Clara said. Back in the operations bay, they cut the last threads. A courier from Trans-Euro watched footage of himself accepting an empty case with a medical sticker and swore more sincerely than many men do at a wedding. The alarm company delivered the field text GPS sites and notes that would map neatly onto a rehearsal 2 days prior. The cleaning supervisor signed another statement that the conditioner bottle came from a lot she herself had hoarded. Nor sent a micrograph of the fiber from the belt clip hinge beside a cross-section from Van Loon's chair. The layers matched within a window narrow enough to make defense experts fidget. The white noise file's notch plot smirked at the panel relay curve like a paperclip at a lock. DeWild leaned on the edge of a desk and watched the board finalize itself into a map without blank squares. "You'll get heat for building a case on a scratch," he said, not unkindly. "I built it on a habit," Clara said. "The scratch is just where the habit decided to stop pretending." He nodded and capped his pen as if closing the day. "We arraign in the morning." "Tomorrow," Clara agreed, feeling fatigue arrive with the same precision the thief had given his loop. "Then we tell the story to the people who like to be asked if physics is persuasive." It was late enough that the corridors had changed pitch. She walked past the evidence room where the Eames chair sat sheathed and tagged, waiting for its cameo on a trolley. Under raking light, its groove would sharpen again. Under normal light, it would go back to being a minor imperfection on an expensive surface. In her pocket, the magnet pen cap clicked against itself, a polite, traitorous sound when her step fell just right. She stopped and held it again to the edge of a demo read switch on the wall outside evidence. The panel winked green. She let it be a toy for a second and then treated it like evidence again because toys are what habits call themselves when they want to hide. She texted DeWild the exhibit list for the morning and sent Aaron Van Loon the message he had been waiting for. Recovered. Serial match pending. Asterisk asterisk, his reply came fast, formal and grateful enough to be useful in court, if not heartfelt yet. Brokers love closure only after it invoices correctly. On her desk lay the page she'd sketched for debrief. She added one more line beneath the arrows. "When craft meets craft, somebody leaves a mark." She didn't underline it. The underlining lived in leather. Paperwork to sign, chain of custody seals to double, an alarmingly good night's sleep for the first time all week. In the morning, the chair would roll under theater lights and a line would read like a signature. Then there would be the last part, the seat of the crime itself, where you put the object back into the room it betrayed and let daylight make it look like nothing at all. Court is a machine that digests narration into verdicts. On the morning of arraignment, the machine came to heel. The charge sheet read cleanly down the page. Luca de Grief, aggravated theft, conspiracy, access device fraud. Marcel Vermeer, complicity. Anita Voss, handling stolen goods. Peter Smet, facilitation. A clerk spoke the names with civic boredom, the way a metronome speaks time. DeWild opened without embroidery. He showed the jury a chair. Not just any chair, the tan leather Eames-style backrest under a raking lamp. In ordinary light, the back looked like a surface you forget after you pay for it. Under the lamp, a pale filament came alive at human height. 62 centimeters from the floor, 13.4 centimeters long, the slightest uptilt toward the right, the nap at the end lifting like a breath held and released. The screen split. On the left, Nor's micrograph of that groove, near parallel walls, a shallow V. On the right, the test groove from the twin chair made by a left-hip clip rising on command. Peaks and valleys followed. FTIR with the petroleum stretch and oleic shoulder. GCMS with the polycrystalline diamond hump at 3 μm and the cobalt trace that shouldn't be in polite furniture. Nor spoke like a tide chart measured, absolute. She walked the panel through oxidation halos and conditioner fracture morphology. Within 36 to 48 hours, this blend fluoresces along a fresh break under 365 nanometers, she said, and the UV torch made the crime groove bruise faintly with time. She placed the spectra of box lip scuffs beside the chair. Same grit, same carrier, same whisper of cobalt. Transfer twice. Hendrick's motion overlay followed. His left hip rising from the twin chair in sync with the lobby silhouette of Lucas Green. Jacket vent flaring over a faint rectangular pressure at the left. The angle of the scratch and the angle of the exit rhymed. The room did not clap. It clicked internally the way minds do when an equation balances. Defense tried its angles. A chair can be scratched by a belt buckle. A shop sells paste to anyone. Fibers travel. Laboratories see what they want. De Wilde nodded as if grateful for the rehearsal and laid the hinge of de Grief's seized belt clip under a camera. Noor's field scope fed the big screen. Grit packed in the hinge grease like stars in a small sky. A tan fiber whose dye layers matched Van Loon's chair cross-section within a tolerance so narrow it felt ungenerous. She read the chemistry again, and the hinge sang the same quiet song. 3-micron diamond, petroleum plus oleic, cobalt trace. Then came the quiet witnesses. The kiosk camera that watched de Grief feed cash into a betting account an hour after buying paste and polymus pins. The hidden camera at Falcon Rui that timed a yellow coat's envelope and a navy cap's retrieval under a blue planter with a cracked rim. The Frankfurt locker door yawning to pelicans that had waited with obedient serials now matched to depositors. The alarm company's field log that put a tech in the building 2 days prior while a different craftsman rehearsed around him. Finally, the white noise file. 90 minutes with a notch at 2.4 kHz, engineered silence, authored by L. Green the day before the loop. Peter Smet owned his part with the kind of precision that rescues men in court more than contrition does. He said the sentence about the earbuds and the quiet and the emptiness that sounded like rain. He said the amount in the envelope. He said the phrase, "very good earbuds," twice because it had been said to him twice. Anita Voss played the adjuster on herself. The calendar entry without an employer, the gate number, the pre-blessing, the code to a locker that believed in being private until a different rule applied. Vermeer watched the polymus pins sleep in their elastic loops and admitted he liked being useful. The judge, a thin woman with the eyes of a person who had paid for other people's precision all her life, leaned forward when Clara's demonstration rolled. The sit-lean stand, the left hip clip kissing leather, the burr lifting right. Physics, De Wilde said in closing, not as flourish but as inventory. Handedness, carry position, transfer, time window, route. The vault is a system. The thief is a system. Systems leave marks. The jury went out as if for air and returned with the weight of a decision that did not need adjectives. Guilty on the counts that mattered. In the gallery, relief behaved itself. The quarter measures gratitude like carrots. Paperwork followed, the real work of restoration. The Frankfurt locker yielded trays of stones that went home to people who kissed them with eyes before hands. Serial numbers stitched ledgers back together. Statements were signed, then filed into the fossil record of civic memory. When it was over enough to pretend the story had an end, Clara walked the Eames chair back into Van Loon's office. Sunlight was clumsy at that hour, wide and forgiving. Arend watched like a man trying to learn how to be grateful in a room where nothing is supposed to happen. "Should I replace it?" he asked, half hoping for permission to erase. "Keep it," Clara said. "It's the only honest witness you've got." He looked at the backrest. In daylight, the scratch was laughably nothing. A pale line that could be a hair or a trick. Clara pulled the desk lamp low and raked light across the leather. The filament appeared again, delicate and absolute. Arend flinched a little, the way you do when a picture resolves into a face you recognize. "It will remind you not to hire audits by letterhead," she said. "It will remind you that cameras fall in love with loops and chairs fall in love with facts." He nodded. "And the guard?" "He'll be charged," Clara said. "And then he'll be measured." He helped us measure, too. When she left the building, Pelikanstrat made its normal noises. Couriers pushed the same squeak over the same stones. In the antechamber, the reed switches had new covers, the color more earnest than the walls deserved. Somewhere, a magnet pen sat in an evidence locker and failed to pretend to be a pen. In a lab, a twin chair wore a shallow groove that would teach a roomful of people how to feel an angle in their own spines when they stood to leave. Clara drove once around the lake at Birchsay Wheel. The gulls were already busy inventing new hungers. On her passenger seat, Noor's final report lay clipped and boring, the way truth ought to look when it's ready to work for a living. She thought about the first moment in Van Loon's office when raking light turned leather into topography and a pale line into a sentence. Most people see a scratch and think accident. Detectives read subject, verb, object. At home, she set her phone on the counter and listened to the apartment decide it was hers again. The case lived in her bones the way good puzzles do until they cool. She wrote one line in a notebook she kept for endings. "In Antwerp, you can polish anything. except the truth a chair decides to hold. The city turned the page. The chair stayed where it had been all along, waiting for nothing, remembering everything. Thank you for staying with us through tonight's case. The chair in Antwerp may have been silent, but under the right light it spoke louder than any witness could. In Somnolent Conspiracies, we remind ourselves every time, a perfect crime never exists, only overlooked details waiting for patience. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell icon, and leave a like. It helps the channel bring you more tales of shadows, evidence, and the strange ways truth insists on being found. And as always, remember our closing line. Every shadow has a story, and we'll be here to tell it. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next investigation.